Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts off by introducing us to a lab. We see people running down a corridor and a man kicks open a door. His name is Hong Shokyoung. One of his team members yell, telling him that there are kids inside. We see glass shattering as Hunter Hong asks the kids if they are alright. He smiles warmly, saying they can come out now. He picks up one of the kids asking if he's hurt anywhere. The kid looks over to see one of the scientists on the floor, with a voice full of content. He says the chief got what he deserved, begging for his life on the floor suits him. Hong asks the kid what his name is. The kid thinks for a second, asking what he needs to do to make this man mad, so he tells him that his name is number 12. Hong looks slightly annoyed, asking if that's really his name, and then sets number 12 back down, then kicks the chief in the stomach, while yelling at him, and then continues beating the hell out of him. 12 admires the power, saying it's one that cannot be looked down on. We hear a voice yelling at Hong to stop. He nervously asks the inspector what brings her here. Gassed out, she says that she knew he'd be doing something crazy like this again, and to let the man go. She sighs, saying she appreciates his help, but he makes things harder when he acts like this. 12 asks her if she is his boss. She says no, but she is the one who scolds him when he does something bad. 12 says that's what a boss is, isn't it? And tells her how the lab chief always scolds the other members. And how he hates the kids. She angrily looks over, saying that she'll make sure to scold the bad man. 12 says she looks weak, asking if she is a hunter. She says no, and that she isn't strong, but he shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And that there are plenty of ways to scold someone other than beating them up, just like she did Hunter Hong. Hong catches a stray from her. Then 12 asks her what he has to do to become like her. She pats his head, saying that he needs to study hard and pass an exam. And then make his way up the corporate ladder. 12 is amazed by the overwhelming power that hunters display. And the power of somebody that rules them. This moment shaped his life. We get a 19-year time skip and are taken to the ability management agency ABBA. We see an older version of 12 telling people about dungeons reaching a higher threat level. But everyone looks bored and they're not paying attention to him at all. He says even if they're low-ranked dungeons, if the interior is unstable, the threat level will rise. He tells them to wake up and listen so they aren't lost when they get there. The hunters sit up. He continues telling them that Team 2 will be in charge of the B2 ranked dungeon and asks if there's any complaints. A woman says no. He says Team 1 can take the Tian dungeon. Teams 3 and 4 are resting because they just went into a dungeon recently. And that another guild will take care of the mountain dungeon. He tells them that they've prepared the equipment, so double check that nothing is missing. He looks at his watch, asking if they have any further questions, but nobody says a damn word. He says thought so and tells them to get lunch and tells Team 2 to get on standby. As everybody goes to leave, he sees one of the hunters, Yujun, is not moving, asking her what's wrong. She asks if he remembers the dungeon she told him about. He asks if she's talking about the one inside of Bangidong, saying it was only a D6 ranked dungeon and that they only send people on raids once they reach level 2. She tells him that she has a bad feeling about it, and he sighs, saying that if they close dungeons based off feelings they would get railed by the media and she shouldn't abuse her powers because she's an S-rank hunter. She barks back, saying that he's abusing his power, calling him a Nepo baby. He asks her if she's ever seen a more capable and skilled Nepo baby. She claps back, saying that she would have fired him a long time ago if he wasn't so damn good at his job. He jokingly says that he hopes she doesn't hit him. She shifts to a serious tone, saying that she really feels bad about this dungeon. He tells her that it's too bad that he's no longer on business hours and not to contact him. Then closes the door, laughing, saying that she couldn't contact him anyways if she's inside of the dungeon. She seems really happy. We learn that 12's real name is Wu Vihai, J for short. It jumps to 2 days later inside of Busan, and some women are asking about a watch. Jay says that it is a masterpiece created by the Manhwa Research Lab, but it's still in the testing phase, so there are only 2 in the entire world. The girls say he must be a great hunter then. He says he has a license, but nah, he works at ABBA. He tells them that he is a direct affiliate of the agency director. They say that they recognize the director, saying that he's talking about Hunter Hong. Jay says that it's embarrassing to say, but he is his father. They are surprised, but he tells them that his adoptive father. And how he was in an accident when he was a child and lost his parents. And that Hong saved him and adopted him, so he's been working hard to repay that debt. Then he laughs while telling them not to think of him as a Nepo baby, as he's worked hard for his position. They say of course, since Hong is known to be fair. Jay sips his drink, saying that was a complete lie. And he's glad that he has a hunter's license to use it like this. One of the girls asks him why he came here, and he says that he is on vacation to celebrate his promotion. He didn't want to, but was forced to take time off. One of the girls says it's never good to be working all the time, and they're also here on vacation. He asks if he's getting in the way, and they say no, then ask if he can show them what he did earlier. He stretches his hand out and they ask what it is called. He calls it the hunter. I am not reading all of that. It's called a mana watch. They say that it's not just a simple watch, asking how he uses it. He says that it recognizes mana patterns, so only he can use it, and then opens up a status window from it, which shows the dungeon's threat levels. One of the girls is confused, asking Jay why one of the dungeon's threat levels are suddenly climbing. The blue status window shifts to red to show that the dungeon inside of Bangidong is at a threat level of 0. They then get alerts on their phone saying that there is a dungeon break. And they begin to panic. Jay gets a call on his phone and someone's telling him that it's bad. He says he saw asking about the Bangidong dungeon. Jay says he doesn't think it'll be bad since it's just a D rank dungeon. But the person on the phone tells him that it's not a D rank, as half of the district was already wiped out right after it breaking. Jay's heart sinks as he is full of disbelief. The person on the phone says that Hong is on his way right now. Jay tells the person to calm down and he'll be on his way, saying to send a helicopter for him. They say alright and to please hurry. It jumps to him inside of the helicopter and he says there's no way half of the district would be gone. But it should be fine by the time he gets there as Hong is going. He sighs, saying just when he started his vacation, and then his watch gives off a notification and he wonders why it's going off. The helicopter pilot then tells him that there's something wrong and to look below, as we see monsters all outside. There's some Tentai monsters, weird eyeball dudes and a bunch of goblins. Then a new notification appears. As every dungeon in the nation has broke open. Jay realizes that they're screwed. He gets more alerts on his phone saying that the dungeon breaks aren't happening only in Korea but worldwide. And that the hunters who went on the raid with Hong have not been heard from. Jay realizes that they won't be able to return to Busan, so they should fly around and look for survivors. Then it jumps to him smacking a wolf across its face and then stabbing it in the head. We see that there are multiple bodies strung out along the road behind him. He frantically opens his status window on the watch to check on Hong, but it says that his vitals cannot be tracked. He starts to have feelings of panic, wondering if Hong is really dead, saying that there's no way. Jay says that he just wanted a simple future. He wanted to push all the annoying tasks onto others and live a comfortable life. He struggled a ton to achieve this. Yet now it's all ruined, as he desperately searches for a survivor. As he's walking, he hears coughing from behind and turns around. And we see June, who he calls Auntie, and she says she told him not to call him that while holding onto her stomach as she's bleeding out. He asks her what happened here and she says that the centipede that came out of the Bangidong dungeon caused all this. He pops the cork off of a potion and she says, that pricey potion won't work here. He tells her that he won't know until he tries and starts pouring it on her. She says that she warned him, but he ignored her hunter instinct. He says there's nothing less trustworthy than a hunter's instinct, and she laughs, saying he's not wrong. He throws the empty potion away. She tells him that she's done for, reaching into her pocket, and then pulls out a dog tag saying it belongs to Hong. Saying surely he knows that he's dead. She brought it just in case, but she's glad she did. He asks why she's glad. She replies saying that as his son he should hold on to it. He tells her that he's not even his real son, and she says that he should at least give him a proper funeral. He says okay, but tells her that he doesn't want to give her one too, so don't die. She goes to ask why he's always joking around, but she can see that he has a serious expression on his face, as he sadly asks her not to die. We see her hand trembling and she says that she can't control it. She's lucky to have lived this long. She looks off to the side, calling out to him, asking if he remembers when he used to follow her around and call her big sister, saying how he used to be so cute back then. But now he's just a brat. She tries to tell him to look behind for her sword, but he tells her to shut up, saying that he has more potions. He starts to cry, saying he'll call her big sis again, so please just shut up. She tells him that she knows he's using a spear because of Hong, but it's still good to take her sword. Then she musters up all of her energy and smiles, telling him to make it out alive. And then her body goes limp in front of Jay. He closes her eyes, asking how he's meant to survive in this world. Then stands up, picking her sword up off the floor. And in a broken voice says that he hates this. At the Ability Management Agency, we see a giant centipede's corpse. Jay walks up saying that he expected this. And how being a hunter is a very dangerous job. But it's a job for the strong, saying it's crazy to see how many corpses there are here just to kill one centipede. Even the strongest hunter died, leaving nothing behind but a dog tag. He gets lost in thought, wondering what to do now. He wonders if he should find another survivor, but says there might not be any to begin with. A blue energy starts to envelop his sword. He raises it screaming and then attacks the centipede's corpse, creating a giant shockwave. The corpse completely vanishes, and Jay is puzzled, wondering where the hell it just went. We see a golden light as there is a clock. He picks it up, wondering if this came from the centipede, saying he's never heard of a monster dropping items before. After he picks it up, the clock says verification, and starts the talk about initiating an emergency procedure. The clock tells him to select a date, and he is confused what it's yapping about. It keeps asking him if he would like to execute, as it's failing to initiate protocol. He wonders what it needs a date for and what it's trying to do. The clock continues. Annoyed, he asks what the hell it wants. Then it starts to give warnings, as a giant shadow looms over him. He turns, wondering if it's another centipede, but realizes that this is much stronger, as the energy is more overwhelming than the centipedes. We see a giant hand on one of the skyscrapers, as the clock tells him that he has a 0% chance of survival. In a panic, he tells the clock to execute whatever protocol it's going on about. It bugs out, trying to confirm his identity, and says identity blank confirmed, and then initiates the emergency protocol, and then goes to check his verification, as he sees the giant creature come out from seemingly nowhere. The clock continues bugging out with the verification and says failure blank to execute the savior. Then checks his qualification, saying that he is ineligible. Jay looks up at the monster, making eye contact with it, wondering if running away is even possible from this. The clock continues, initiating the final sequence. It confirms his eligibility. He realizes that escaping from this thing won't be possible. The clock says blank possibility verified. The world is bound for destruction, calling him the final survivor. Jay yells, saying he doesn't care and just to get him out of here. It confirms his desperate order, saying that it's moving him to a random time. He hears faint voices as they call out to him, and a woman yells, saying to wake up. He catches her hand before she slaps him. She apologizes, saying that he wouldn't wake up regardless of what they did. We see a bunch of students and he sits up, confused about what's going on. The girl says that they assume he's a hunter because he has a sword. He is confused, saying that the whole world has been destroyed and wonders where he is, curious as to why they have the Hunter Academy's old uniform on. We see the girl who woke him up is named Yu-hyun. He glances around the room, spotting that the date is 2024, and is shocked as this is 20 years in the past. One of the students angrily calls out to him. We learn his name is Yoon-wook, and he tells his friend to let go of him. Jay recognizes the name and looks over. Yoon-wook tells him that they don't have time for him to lock in. A roar cuts him off. Jay quickly jumps off from the floor and heads over to the window. He looks down, wondering why of all the years it would take him here, as a black buffalo herd is seen below the window. He says that of the 46 people in this building, only 5 will live. Jay begins to wonder what's going on. He starts to recall everything that's led up to this moment. All of the corpses, Joan dying, Hong's death, along with the mysterious clock from the centipede. He wonders if he's really returned to the past. He says he published a paper about dungeon breaks as an undergrad, so he understands it well. He explains how right before the development of magic measurement devices, they were managed manually. There was a dungeon in the middle of Seoul that was managed well, but still, dungeons were unpredictable. One day it was calm, the next day it could explode. He explains how there was a guild that didn't want to lose out on an S-rank dungeon, and they falsely reported it as a B rank. It ended up breaking, and there were a ton of casualties because the guild responsible for it lied about the rating. The nearby high schoolers who were training to become hunters tried to protect the civilians, but since they were just students, they weren't able to handle the dungeon break. So there were only 2 students who survived and 3 civilians. This is the incident that he is currently a part of now. He realizes that he still has June's sword in his hand, so he's time traveled rather than regressing. He's confident in escaping the situation alone, but he doesn't want to leave the students behind. He asks them how long it has been since the dungeon broke, and they're confused. He asks them if they haven't learned about dungeon breaks yet. Hyun says that they came here to learn about them today. He says they better start learning then, and ask when it broke. One of the other girls says that it was about 4 hours ago. Jay tells her he doesn't need abouts, he needs exact numbers. Hyun tells him it has been 3 hours and 50 minutes, and that they lost communication 2 hours ago, but they did hear that there were hunters preparing to attack the boss. Jay says that Hong was a part of this attack team, and he blamed himself for only attacking the boss without noticing the students, so he won't let that happen again. Hyunwook says not to be rude, but wonders who Jae is. He asks how they're meant to trust somebody that they don't even know, asking if he has a hunter license, and to show it to him. Jae tells him that he lost it, but the real reason is because his license says 2031, so he can't whip it out. He says now that he thinks about it, he has no form of identification here, so he can't even go check out the dungeon if he managed to get out. He sighs, saying that he just needs to prove he's a hunter, and then releases his magic power to show them. Hyunwook says that he believes he's a hunter, and some of the other civilians wonder if they're actually able to escape, and then comments about how there is a student named Lee Sung-jeon. He's the youngest child of one of the world's biggest conglomerates, and we see him sitting in the back. Jae recognizes him, saying that he was highly treasured, and after his death, his family helped to maintain the school, establishing the Ability Management Agency, promoting Hong to the agency director. Jae wonders what will happen if Sung-jeon lives. He says even if he doesn't have an identity, he'll create a scenario where he has to save Sung-jeon from danger, becoming a hero, so they can't criticize him. Then he tells them they'll all be going to the city hall. An older man yells, asking if he's out of his mind, saying how far City Hall is from here. Jae gets annoyed and tells the man to listen, but he thinks to himself about how in the survivor testimony, they brought up this old man and how he didn't listen to the students. So he bluntly asks the man if he wants to die. The old man panicked asks if he's threatening him. Jae tells him to shut up, saying that it'll be hard to even save himself here. But he doesn't want to leave the kids behind. So he will lend a hand. He tells the students that if they want to leave by themselves he will not stop them. But Hyun says that she doesn't want to leave anyone behind. Jae makes sure the old man hears this, and tells the old man that if he doesn't want to help, then to just leave. The old man awkwardly says that's not the case. Jae then says he needs a map asking if anybody knows the area well. A woman tells him that she can draw it fairly well. And then later we see him with the map. He highlights where they are, and where the dungeon is, saying that it's been 2 hours since the raid started. The boss should be driven to where the mountain is, and that the boss is a minotaur. The students panic because a minotaur is an S-ranked monster, and that the mountains are actually pretty close to them. Jae tells him that the buffalo probably followed the boss to the mountain, so the only monsters here would be the buffalo who got separated from the herd. He then draws a circle on the map asking if anybody knows what it is. Hyun tells him that it is the outer part of the blockade, which is a defense line, so monsters can't spread elsewhere. He says that's right, and since City Hall is the headquarters, they just need to get there and they will surely survive. Somebody else suggests they just wait for the boss to be defeated, saying that they should just wait, because once they defeat the boss the dungeon break will end. Jae shakes his head saying that the Minotaur is a dictator. If he says to gather they gather. If he orders them to hunt, they hunt. But even if the boss disappears the monsters won't. They'll just keep loitering around here, and that they'll still be starving. Then asks if there are any more disagreements with the plan. Nobody says anything and he says moving on. Then ask if there are any mages who can draw runes. We see one of the students drawing on Sung-jeon's forehead. Jae tells them that monsters are sensitive to mana, so to make sure they draw the runes well. One of the girls says that she's never heard of something like this before. Jae understands since they're runes from the future after all. He explains that when it's on their foreheads it hides mana that's connected to them, but it does not hide mana that's been cast already. He makes sure they all know how to activate the runes, saying that they need to fill their hand with mana and touch the rune. As soon as he leaves to activate them he makes sure to adjust Sung-jeon's. To make his mana weaker instead, he tells them that he's going to release his mana now and lure the monsters in a loop around the neighborhood. When he passes by again, they should start running, and then he will send them away, and catch up to them. He leaps out of the window, saying that it's time, and then lands on the floor by the buffaloes. He starts running saying that he wishes he had a cape, so he could be more like a matador. After a bit the students and the teachers head out of the building. Wondering who Jae really is, Glasses, I don't know his name, says that surely he's one of the hunters who came to raid the dungeon, since he knew about the boss. The girl says that it's possible as he is a knower. Hyun suggests that he probably tripped while driving the boss away from the city. Sung-jeon says if he fainted while doing that, isn't he low-key ass, but they remind him that the boss is a minotaur. Hyun says the only thing they can do right now is trust him, as he did manage to lure the monsters away. The old man calls out to all the students, saying that he's ready to run with them, and tells them to all be careful. As they talk, Glasses tell them that he's on his way. We see Jae hauling absolute cheeks as the buffalo are hot on his ass. He swings his sword, doing what I assume is concealing his mana. The buffalo all start to slowly walk past him. Hyunwook realizes that it's time to go and they all start to run. As they start to leave, they recall his strategy. The martial arts hunters will take the lead, while mages will cast shields on both sides of them. If there are any stragglers, just block them while Hyunwook takes care of them, and the civilians just need to run for their lives. He got Sung Jian and Hyun to stand in the back, as one of them is a healer and the other is a swordsman. Sung Jian quickly feels breathing down his neck, as he turns to see a buffalo whispering something sweet into his ear. We see the buffalo's head getting kicked to the side as Jay flies in. Sung Jian sees this and Jay turns telling him to run. Sung Jian starts calling out to him but Jay tells him just to run away and he begins to unleash his mana drawing their aggro. It cuts to Jay standing on a rooftop looking down at the buffalo. He wonders where the hell they keep coming from, and sighs saying that it was a struggle getting out of there. He didn't expect it to be so rough. He explains to us how it happened. He leaked his mana on purpose to gather the mobs, then slightly modified Sung Jian's rune to put him in danger. Right before the buffaloes attacked him, he made a sacrificial scene so he would be recognized as a hero. In the end it worked perfectly, but now he doesn't know what to do. He says if he's really time traveled, that means the 10-year-old version of him is still here. He doesn't want it to end up back to the future where he erases himself from changing history. He also brings up how the clock mentioned that the world is guaranteed to be doomed, saying that it must be related to the Bangidong dungeon. Then he realizes something, saying that his mana watch should still work, as long as he supplies it with mana. He starts typing away and seems relieved, after seeing something on the watch. He sees the date saying he wondered why it was so specific. Turns out there was a reason for it. It's the clock telling him to change the fate of this world. He hears a scream which snaps him out of his daydreaming and he looks over to see the Minotaur chasing some hunters down the street. The hunters are complaining about how many mobs there are and say the boss must have called them. Jay says that he should not intervene, as they originally defeated the boss anyways. Also Hong is here and we see him running in. Jay says that all of the legendary hunters have gathered here so it's like a VIP seat. We hear a girl say "here we go," as she speaks enchantment table, shooting out a root wrapping around the boss's foot. Jay recognizes it as the Archmage Kim came in since her magic is unique. He says it was completely lost after her death, but then wonders how exactly she died. He decides he should keep her alive as she will be helpful in the future. He says the dungeon shouldn't break until 20 years from now, also that just having a couple S ranks in the future wasn't enough for the centipede. So if he could spare those that were destined to die like the students it would be beneficial. He needs to find the dungeon where the person who lit Soul on fire is hiding as well. He seems excited with his own plan, saying that it will help to a comfortable retirement. We hear Hong yelling "done," as he slices the leg off of the Minotaur that has been wrapped up by Kaimin. She raises her staff into the air casting another spell, called Eliminating Vines. She slams her staff into the ground and vines start to sprout out wrapping around the Minotaur tying it down. The Minotaur struggles to stay on his 2 feet and grabs onto a nearby building for support. He pushes himself off of the building and swings his hammer forward at the hunters. Jay decides that it's time for him to head out to City Hall. One of the hunters tells Hong to cut the other leg off of the boss. He says bet. Chaimin continues her spell, keeping the boss unable to move, as someone in the back is holding onto the vines like a rope. Bro is on the juice. We see Hong's spear stab into the boss's leg. It groans and falls over as the vines are unable to keep it upright. Jay sees a shadow falling over him as he looks up, to see the boss going first towards him. Hong looks over and spots Jay behind the Minotaur. One of the other hunters wonder if Jay is a citizen but Hong says he's wielding something. Jay strikes the boss with his blue mana, lighting the boss on fire. Hong and Chai Min are surprised, as the boss gets burned, turning into charcoal. From behind it, Jay tells everyone to continue what they were doing, paying him no mind. But Hong and Chai Min wonder who he is. Jay steps out from behind the boss, saying that he's just a simple passerby. It cuts to him inside of the interrogation room and the officer says they took his weapon. But he's still suspicious as he has no form of identification. Hong says that's okay and he has something to ask him. The officer leaves, telling him to be careful. They have an awkward WWE stare down. While laughing, Hong tells him that he cut the camera off so they can talk. He says they should start with their names and he introduces himself. Jay says it's still surreal to see him so young. He wonders if Hong will save him a year from now, then adopt him 2 years after. Jay tells him his name. Hong slides a piece of paper forward asking if he knows what this is. Jay is surprised, saying that it's the drawing that covered the laboratory walls. Hong could tell from his reaction that he understood what it was and then laughs, saying he just wants to talk. Hong asks Jay if he was nervous. Jay is just confused, asking if he's that easy to read. Hong nods, saying that if things went according to plan, they would have met in a better situation. And says that he made it out safe, exactly like he heard from the blue mana, fire, and the sword. Jay is confused, asking if he had a stroke. Hong then tells Jay that he is the teacher that Kim was talking about. Jay wonders if he's mistaking him for a whistleblower from the lab. Hong tells him that he was worried since they lost contact, but that he's already agreed to help them escape, so he had prepared an identity for them on this side. While he starts talking about it, Jay says this is a very good opportunity for him to get an actual identity. Hong says that he will call him Jay from now on. Jay realizes that he's not actually lying since he is from the laboratory and an insider, so he will be able to cover pretty well. Hong tells him that he will be working under him. Jay asks if it's for surveillance. Hong tells him that he can think of it that way. Then stretches his hand out, saying he looks forward to working with him. Jay thinks about how he ended up working under Hong again, saying that he is not his foster father or the agency director, but rather, just a hunter now. It cuts to a week later and Jay is visibly annoyed. Hong asks him how his stay has been, asking if it has been okay. Jay says there's no way it would be fine when he's been stuck here for a week. Hong laughs, saying that he visits him every day though, so surely it's fine. Jay shows that he has a glorified prison anklet on his foot. Hong says that he should try to see the positive side. He managed to escape and now he's free. He said that there was a lot he wanted to do. Jay says that he's the one who wanted to do it and calls him Mr. Hong tells him to call him uncle instead, then ask him if he remembers the 5 students that he saved. Then tells him that they are actually his students. He says he also heard that he's the one who baited the buffalo away and they were able to easily dispatch them, since they were grouped up, or else the damage could have been worse. Jay says that he's gotten it wrong but he doesn't want to correct him. Hong says that all that matters was the results were good and the kids are safe as well, thanking him. Jay starts feeling himself, saying it was nothing. Hong then says that he was thinking about something. Jay realizes that him thinking is not a good thing. Hong says that he knows the skill level of his students the best, so it would have been difficult for them to save even themselves, but Jay also saved them and the citizens. So everyone would have died if it had not been for him. Hong says that all the kids were crying, begging him to find Jay, so he puts some thought into it. Jay says he thinks way too damn much. Hong puts an employment form on the table, saying to teach them, as it'll be too conspicuous if he follows him around the dungeons. But if he works as a teacher it'll be a good cover. Jay thinks about teaching the kids, saying that he understands how deep the bond is between a disciple and their master, and that there were several people including June who consider Hong their teacher. It would be a good thing to create a strong connection with them, securing his future, also to help save the world. But he doesn't want to reveal that thought right now. He asks Hong why he would teach the kids when he can't use mana, saying that Mr. would be a better candidate. Hong corrects him, saying uncle. Jay says my bad. Hong laughs, saying that it would be easy to teach them how to fight but the problem is magic. Then says regarding the runes that hide mana. Then asks if he made them himself. Jay says he should have just kept quiet, asking if he's meant to teach the kids about runes. Hong says it doesn't matter whether or not he made them, he just needs to teach the kids about them. Jay says he thought he was going to teach them how to raid dungeons, but it would be too suspicious for an illegal awakened to know a lot about them. They then have an ace attorney court battle, about how runes are not magic, and how Jay's not suited for teaching. But Hong says that he knows he will fit right in. Jay wonders if he should just say he made the runes and get them patented, but decides that would be immoral. Then second guesses himself, saying that if he spreads the knowledge of them, he can save more people. Hong starts laughing, saying that he can tell he is deep in thought, but knows he is going to do it anyways. Jay sighs, saying that it's for the kids. He looks down at the paper while Hong explains that he will be listed as a guild member, but since he is not doing raids there are no other incentives. So he just gets paid his base monthly salary of minimum wage. Jay double checks the paper, while Hong laughs, saying that he'll just be getting 93% of that during his probationary period. Also, they don't have vacation since it's less than 5 people, but they still take off public holidays. Jay curls up the paper, saying this is a damn scam. It jumps again to 2 days later, and we see them in a van. Hong compliments the sword, saying that it recognizes the owner, asking if it's his. Jay replies, saying that it's somebody else's. Hong asks if he stole it, but Jay says if he did, he would have been burned. Hong says that makes sense. Jae says that the sword actually used to hate him, but it understands that June gave it to him before dying. Hong asks Jae if he's mad that he didn't return it to him. Jae says no, he wouldn't have been able to use it anyways, because of his anklet. They banter a little bit. Hong smiles, saying that his school does not allow blades anyways, so he can't use it either. Also, his classes won't require weapons. Jae says he could also just be blunt about not wanting a suspicious man to have a weapon around his students. Hong asks why he's so pessimistic. Jae sighs, looking out the window, saying he didn't deny it, then is completely taken aback, as they are going into the mountains. Jae wonders if he's going to be taken out back and executed. Hong tells him that this area is restricted from development due to nearby dungeons, but that is what makes it perfect for raising hunters. The van comes to a stop, as we see what can only be described as Minecraft starter houses. Hong says it's just a bit shoddy. Jae says that shoddy is an overstatement. This is straight ass. Jae asks him if he has to stay here for a year. Hong's eyes sparkle like a magical girl's, as he says, every journey starts with the first step. Then he laughs at his own joke, welcoming him to Hunter High School. In one of the rooms, Hong tells everybody that Jae will be teaching them about runes. Hong says surely some of them recognize him, saying not to be mean to him. Yun Wook raises his hand, saying that he remembers Jae using a sword rather than magic. Hong says that you don't have to be a mage to use runes. It was hard to get him to be a teacher, and this is what they agreed upon. Glasses ask him if they are going to learn the mana hiding runes, or if it will be new ones. Hong says that it will be the new ones. And he should be of great help to them. So to pay attention to his lessons. Glasses says surely it's not okay for him to teach this stuff. Hong says if it wasn't, he would not be teaching here, asking if he does not want to learn about runes. Glasses says he does, since he finds them awesome. The entire time, Sung Jian has been going pog crazy. One of the students asks Hong if only mages can participate in the lesson. Hong says no, but they can choose if they want to take his lesson or not. Sung Jian finally asks if Jae was hurt from back then or not, saying that he was really worried about him. Hyun also says she was worried. All of the students that were there say they asked Hong about it, but he would not tell them anything. They all were worried about him. Jae says that all of these kids are so wholesome, and they are so different from how they will be in the future. And how in the future, one of these kids will be stabbed in the back and left for dead inside of a dungeon. Then he is shocked, wondering what is wrong with Park Seon, saying that she was normal last time he saw her. And it has only been 10 days since the incident. So how did she become the witch Seon that he knows? It flashbacks to Glasses telling Seon to look at the rune he drew. She tells him that she doesn't think there should be a line this long, and he says she's right. He corrects it, saying it is hard for him, but she makes it seem easy. She says that her grandpa taught her when she was young, then gets him to draw Yun Wook's, and she will draw Sung Jian's. Glasses says that he can do it if she is tired. But she proudly tells him not to worry as she has more experience being a mage, and they will need him to shield for them later on. It turns out that her grandfather used to say that arrogance ruins everything. She thinks that the rune she drew on Sung Jian did not work. Her grandpa's words start to echo through her head, drowning out everybody's voices. Which is what led to her drastic personality shift. It takes us back to his original timeline of 2044, inside of the Ability Management Agency. We see Seon greeting everybody. But they are low-key scared of her, so they walk away. Then we see a fat Yun Wook ask her what she's doing. She greets him too. He asks if she is here to meet Mr. Hong. She says no, and we see Jae trying to get past Yun Wook, saying to get out of his way. He tells them that he did not call them here to chat, but Yun Wook asks who he is. Jae greets them, telling them that he is an aide from the headquarters. He is here to help with the dungeon raid. Yun Wook looks annoyed, asking where he is from. Jae, also in an annoyed tone, starts to lecture him about his job. But Yun Wook says he ain't gonna listen to all that. Jae bluntly tells him he works in the agency director's office. It takes us back to the present, and we see Hong telling Jae that he can stay in his house for now, but he lives here too, so do not complain. Jae says that he is just glad he doesn't have to live in the Minecraft starter house. Hong says that is good and then leaves, telling him to have a good night. On the bed he looks down at his anklet, saying when he was young he used to wonder why he had to learn these things. Then he takes it off, saying that Hong was right, you need to know a lot about technology. While going through his watch, he wonders what he should look at first, saying he could find some records about Kim. As he goes to type, he stops, then starts to type in Seon's name, saying he wants to know about what changed her personality. Then he is shocked once he sees a handout given to staff members about how to avoid her. The first rule is to not praise her magic as she hates it. Jae finds that weird, and number 2 is that if she is not smiling, then to run since you are in danger. In case of emergency, mention the names Yeon-wook or Jun and never mention her school to her. Jae says if that incident changed her personality it makes sense, as there were no bodies left of her friends. But it doesn't make sense this time since he saved everybody. So he wonders what her problem is. He sighs, saying whatever, and keeps looking. Then sees an article written by Hong talking about Ark's River of Promise, which is a research center. It jumps to the next day. We see Jae waiting outside. Sung Jian walks up to him, but Jae is lost in thought, saying that this shit is bleak. He talks about maybe giving up and just living the next 20 years peacefully, abusing his future knowledge, but recalls Jun's words, telling him to make it out alive. The entire time, Sung Jian was trying to talk to him, but he ignored him. So Sung Jian yells, getting his attention. Jae gets a bit scared. Sung Jian asks what he's thinking about so hard. Jae calls out to him, and Sung Jian is surprised that he remembers his name. Then asks him where his sword is, saying his aunt is curious about it. Jae asks about his aunt. Sung Jian humble brags about his aunt, saying she is famous. Jae thinks about it, saying that it must be the master of the Dae Sion Guild, Lee Mi Sion. She is a powerful hunter, who cared about Sung Jian a lot in his timeline so he could secure his future. But Hong calls out to him saying to come here, ruining Jae's plan. Jae sighs, saying okay. He heads inside the building, asking Hong what he needs. Hong tells him that he is making a classroom for him. Jae is a bit dejected, asking if he means this room. Hong says yeah, it's just a storage room, so he'll clean it up later. Jae sighs, asking if he can do something about Sion. Hong asks what he means. Jae explains to him that she is very different than when he first saw her at the school. Hong says that her style sure has changed, then proudly says that every hunter hits a wall, and this might just be one that she hit. Jae realizes that this guy is mentally cooked. He says that he is hopeless, as he is way too optimistic about everything. He says that he will never be able to understand normal people's concerns. Later in the day, Jae explains that modern dungeon strategies are divided into before and after the revaluation of runes. He says that runes were long neglected due to several flaws. But an archmage in France revealed the mana hiding rune. And just like when the Fire Nation attacked, everything changed. Despite the flaws, all mages learned this rune. And by 2040, they started making mana equipment like pens and his watch. But at this point, runes are exclusive to mages. As he is teaching, he gets distracted as we see Hong and some other students in the back. He wonders why they are here when they can't even use runes in the first place. He tells Glasses and Sion that since they have been practicing a lot, he wants to assess their levels today. We finally learn that Glasses' name is Choi Jin-woo. He starts to mock Jin-woo, who seems to be having fun learning. Jae asks him if he understands why runes weren't used in the past. Jin-woo says that is because using magic is more convenient. Jae asks him why that is and his brain starts to melt. Jae realizes that must have been too hard of a question for a student. He goes to ask Sion. But she's too busy eating her pencil. He starts to think that maybe she's just possessed since nobody else thinks she's weird. And then tries to ask her. She starts to speak, and he gets scared because she is hella creepy. But she answers him saying that runes get easily erased. He tells her that is correct. And it's especially easy for them to get erased inside of dungeons. Then asks how they compensate for that. He says he will show them and starts drawing a rune on the board. There's a lot that goes into it, and Jin-woo and Sion watch intently. After he is done drawing the enchantment table rune, they are surprised asking how they are meant to memorize this. He tells them that the combination of runes makes it hard to be erased. Sion reaches her hand asking why he didn't teach them that back at school when he first met them. Jae starts to realize what her problem is. And she says never mind, she just drew the wrong runes in the first place. He understands now, that her personality change is because of the runes on Sung Jian being changed. He says that being a hunter is battling with yourself, whether you win or lose. It is your battle. In the end she still will become an archmage, so he could easily ignore this. She shows him again that she drew the new rune. Asking if she did it correctly, but he does not answer since he is lost in thought. She starts to think that he isn't answering because she was wrong. Then starts to cry thinking that she is a failure, and that she messed it up again. He loudly claps his hands together to snap her out of it, saying it might not be his fault but as an adult and a teacher it is his responsibility. We see Jae eating, saying that he shouldn't have followed Hong because now he's stuck eating convenience store food inside of one of the starter houses. Hong says that he's pretty knowledgeable about runes, asking if he made them himself. Jae asks if they have to talk about this even while they eat, then tells him that somebody he knows made it. Hong says it's just crazy that he knows so much about runes when he is not a mage. Jae eats his food, saying that he thought he dropped his suspicions, but they're back again. Then decides to add a backstory. He puts on an Oscar-worthy performance, saying that it's a waste to let such knowledge disappear, so he learned it just in case. Hong buys it, saying that he brought up something useless, and to forget what he said. Jae then asks him how he is teaching Sion and Jin Woo. Hong says that he just gives them whatever magic books he can find. He says that Sion has been learning magic since she was a child, but Jin Woo is the problem, as he is having a hard time mastering it. Then he insinuates that Jae should teach them. Jae reminds him that he is not a mage. Hong says that he was just making sure. Jae replies, saying that he may not know magic, but he will teach them all of the runes he knows. Hong starts to spit out his food in disbelief. Jae asks why he is so surprised, saying that he will have to publicize all of the runes he knows anyways. Hong asks if that's okay since they were runes made inside of Ark. Jae says yes, just to make sure that Hong is the publisher, that is his only condition. Hong is surprised and Jae asks if he expected him to ask for gold or something else. Hong says no, he just only expected for the students to learn 1 or 2 runes. Jae says at first he just wanted to teach them a couple and call it a day. But seeing how weak they are, it's obvious they won't last long. Hong asks if it's okay with a mage who made the runes for him to teach it to others. Jae says that he is somebody who would be happy if his work saves a single life, as it was the archmage from France that created the mana hiding runes. With saving people being his only goal, he gave away all of his work for free, so he will not care if others take credit. Jae adds another condition, saying that he knows a place that have children in need, and since it is only 2024, he's trying to get Hong to head to the research center and save the younger him a year early. The next day outside we see Hong teaching some of the students. We see him knock Yoon Wook down. Yoon Wook stands back up while Sung Jian leaps at Hong from behind. Hong easily blocks the attack and counters, hitting them both. This knocks them down and he laughs, calling them cute, saying to try it again. Jae watches them, saying that brutes have no elegance compared to his mages. It's night and day. But he spoke too soon, as Jin Woo starts pulling out his hair out of frustration. Jae chalks it up to him just being at that age. Sion says she is drawing it the way he told her. Jae asks if he can take a look. She says no and that she'll show him later. He tries to tell her that his role is to help them get better, but again she says later. He tries explaining that if she develops a bad habit, it would be better to fix it now, but decides that he just needs to encourage them instead. He wonders what he used to do in the past and then recalls him and June bullying other hunters for their stupid ideas. He realizes he can't do this to the students. He then sees Hong encouraging on his side and starts to think about his timeline when Hong saw his report card for the first time. Hong noticed that Jae wasn't happy with it and asks him about it. Jae tells him that he wanted to be in first place rather than second. Hong tells him that even if he isn't first, it does not matter. Jae tries to tell him it does because he wants to go to college. Hong laughs, saying that it will work out as long as he does his best. The flashback ends and Jae tells Sion that he gets it, she can show it to him when she's ready. He smiles kindly at her, saying that she has enough talent to become an archmage and more, and that they're usually stubborn and hate being distracted. She doesn't reply at all to his comments and he starts to wonder why the atmosphere is so tense. But then she begins to cry and apologizes to him. She starts wiping away her tears and tries to hand him her paper. He tells her that she can do it when she wants, but she just continues handing him the paper. He tells her just to take her time, but still while crying apologizes, saying that she was wrong. Jae is taken aback, wondering what he did wrong. And then Hong tells them that classes are over and to clean up and go home. Jinwoo thanks Jae and then Sion walks off. He says he's sure she didn't cry because she was feeling touched by his speech. He lets out a long sigh, saying he can't understand where he went wrong. We see Sung Jian being put into a car as the other students tell Hong they will see him tomorrow. He waves, telling them all to have a safe trip. Jae asks if their houses are close by, but Hong tells him that they just have a nearby dorm. As they are heading home, they talk about how the cases of surprise adoption have been on the rise recently, and that the targets are usually awakened children. There's not even a ransom note. The witnesses don't even care enough to help, so it can happen in broad daylight. Hong asks Jae if the kids he mentioned needing help are part of an ARK facility. Jae says maybe, but there's no way. He thinks that all of the kids are kidnapped, explaining to him that there are orphanages among the places that ARK manages. He can count the ones he knows on one hand, but he is sure there are more. His condition is that Hong needs to save all of those children and let him in on the operation. Hong tells him that he's already made concessions for him, but Jae tells him to calm down, asking if he just plans to take the children away and be done with it. Hong tells him that the current team has enough members, and Jae insists, saying that he knows a way to break the security very easily. Then he tries to cook up a plan and puts on another Oscar-worthy performance, saying that he is someone he needs to find and he wonders if that child is safe. Hong eats up his performance, giving him a look of empathy. He then agrees, saying that it is better for them to have a guide, but it will take some time for them to start, since he has to gather some people. Jae asks if they will be trustworthy, and Hong laughs, saying that he doesn't mess around when it comes to saving children. The next day we see Jae looking at the sky, saying that it's clear. He says that Sion is gloomy like usual, and that the atmosphere is dark. Sung Jian comes in and brightens up the room. Jae says that he is thankful for him. Sung Jian is lost. He introduces a woman named Soon Jin to Jae, who says it's weird they aren't in class right now. Sung Jian says that they are the weird ones, not even taking their lunch breaks. Jae tells him that they have been reducing their breaks on their own accord. Sung Jian says that it must be because they are mages, since he can't sit still due to his Subway Surfer brain. Sung Jian then asks him where his sword is. Jae says that Hong told him not to carry it around. Sung Jian says he wanted to see it up close. He says that since there are two of him, maybe there will be two of his swords as well. A fancy car pulls up to the school and a woman steps out. Jae is surprised as the woman is talking to Hong, and we see that it is Kaimin, the Archmage. Jae says that this didn't happen before and it's a little scary. On her file we see that she died 3 years from now while fighting a siren. She was given an offer to teach, but she tells Hong that she will only be able to do basic magic, as her magic requires high compatibility. Also, how the students don't have the aptitude for it. Hong is surprised that she can tell from just looking. She tells him that she just built like that. She looks at Sion, saying that since she is No Kyung's granddaughter, she probably already has the basics down. Hong says yes, but she has no experience. Kaimin asks if this is why he called her here, and why he said it was related to ARK. He tells her that it's not completely unrelated. Pointing at Jae, she finally realizes who he is, saying that he's the one from the rooftop. He greets her, introducing himself as the student's magic teacher. She says that she saw him carrying a sword, asking if he is a mage. Hong says that he is not, but he knows something better. She asks if he is talking about unique magic, and he says no. Jae smiles, saying that he is teaching these students about runes. But he is glad to have the opportunity to meet her like this. She starts to nervously say that Jae and Hong are not mages, so they might not be aware. Jae cuts her off, saying that she probably thinks runes are ass. But she tells him that she wouldn't go that far. He says that it will be faster to show her. Outside, he is teaching the students how to fix their runes. He tells Sion that her completion rate is getting higher, but she needs to be more confident in her lines. We see Kaimin looking at one of the runes, saying this is complicated. Jae ignores her, telling the students to activate their runes. We see Jin Woo on the ground, putting mana into the rune, as a giant flame pillar comes out from his paper. Kaimin is surprised. And then from Sion's, we see rain begin to pour down, wiping out the flame. Kaimin is completely taken aback, saying that she does not feel mana, asking how he did this. He congratulates the students, saying that not even an archmage could detect their mana. He shows her the mana hiding rune, and she says this is her first time seeing this. She asks if the overlapping lines are different functions, saying that it's crazy to think it would work. Hong tells her that Jae learned it from a mage he knows. She cuts Hong off, telling Hong to accept her as a new student here. That way she can also learn this rune. She tells him that she doesn't need a salary or anything, she just wants to take the class. Hong tells her that he can do that. Kaimin looks at Jae, saying he could also just draw the runes for her. Hong gives him the thumbs up, thanking him. Then she smiles cheerfully, telling Jae that she will be in his care. He also smiles cheerfully, saying that he can't wait, and this is exciting. A few days later, we see a bunch of people outside of one of the laboratories for ARK. Jae asks who all these people are, and Hong tells them that they are trustworthy and quite thorough. Hong reminds everyone that the goal is to save the children, and they will block the escape route. If they gain information, that will be good too. Maybe they could even catch a higher up. Once they are done, they will send the signal and cause chaos. Jae says that he is just using them at this point. Hong tells him that this is just improvisation. One of the men tells Hong that his skill hasn't detected anything, and there are no life forms aside from bugs, nor are there security cameras. Jay asks if the basement is also empty, and the man says yes. Jay is confused, saying that this should not be possible, then stands up, saying they should go inside. They try to tell him to wait, but he slices the lock off the door with his sword and starts walking in. He tells Hong that something is wrong. They should not have been able to move easily due to the children. Hong asks why that would slow them down. Jay tells him that they are experiments, so they need a very specific environment. Jay heads over to a key press on the wall and starts inputting the code to enter the elevator. The door opens, and Hong says if he knew the code, he could have told them this in advance. Jay tells him that he wants to have some hidden cards as well. Hong sees that it goes all the way up to the 5th floor, saying that it is pretty high. Jay tells him it's the opposite, and they will be going to the basement. The elevator door starts to slowly creak open, as there is nothing left inside. They are confused, saying that there is no way Ark knew they were coming. Jay warns them not to use any magic, as they have initiated an emergency protocol. He specifically says that it is called the Pompeii Project, and there are runes hidden all around that respond to magic. If it detects magic, it will explode. Chai-min is fascinated that you can do all of this with runes. Jay says he will teach her later. As they head down the corridor, Jay says that there isn't even dust, so it looks like they left not too long ago. He wonders what changed for Ark to leave in the middle of the night. They get to one of the doors, realizing that it's locked. Jay tells them that this is the main research lab, and if they go inside, the most important research materials should be here. But we see the children's area all empty. Hong and Chai-min start to have a gut-wrenching feeling after they realize why there are so many kids' toys around. Hong asks Jay if there's anything stopping him from destroying the facility. Jay says no. Hong says good, and then hits the glass beside them. The glass window starts to shatter. Jay says, whether it's from the inside or the outside, this place is as spectacular as ever. Jay flashbacks us to the research center when he was younger. His friend was writing something and he asked what it is. His friend says that it is a diary entry, then tells him about his dad being a lawyer, saying evidence is important. Jay tells the kid to write that the lab chief hits them. The kid says that he doesn't though. Jay says he does hit the lab worker sometimes. So if he writes it like this, it is not a lie. We see that he writes the lab chief keeps hitting people. The flashback ends as we see Misin popping her gum. She says that this was just a waste of time. Jay says that Misin looks the same as she does in the future. Hong says that it isn't a waste of time, as it's still a research center. Misin says that she wouldn't have called it a waste of time if there was any data left. But this is not what he promised her. One of her guild members runs up saying that he has removed all of the explosives. She tells him well done. Then says since Hong is talking to her in the most indirect way possible, he must be hiding something from her. He smiles and she asks what it is. Hong glances over at Jay. Then Misin sighs. She tells her members to leave so she can talk privately with Hong, and to go find something useful. Hong asks one of his workers if she is done organizing. That might be K-min. Misin says that he told her there was nothing left behind. Hong says that there was nothing left from the lab workers, handing her a piece of paper saying that it was left behind by a kid. And to be precise, it is Jay's younger brother. Misin looks interested, then starts reading it. It starts to mention how the dungeon in Myung was a failure. He doesn't understand what that has to do with them. Misin gets chills, wondering what the hell this is about. Then it mentions how the chief mentioned a dungeon inside of the Songpa district, and that they have to move. It cuts to 2 days later and then we see Soon Jin sitting there blankly. Jay stares at her, asking if she is watching the ants. She says no. He asks what she is looking at then. She says nothing. He looks down at her, saying that her name is hard to forget. But he doesn't remember her, so she might have died early. Or quit. He asks why she is alone, rather than helping Sung Jian. She says it's the plan, and they can't win against Yun Wook, even if they team up against him. Jay says that's true, as he shows a lot of potential, even when compared to Sion. Then he says that the rest of them are about average. Soon Jin asks if he can stop watching them. He understands something, asking her whose idea it was. She says Sung Jian came up with it. She watches Sung Jian and Yun Wook. Then she grabs onto her sword and leaps at Yun Wook from behind, swinging at him. He matrixes her attack, but it gets hit in the stomach by Sung Jian. Yun Wook manages not to fall over. Soon Jin says that is a shame, and Yun Wook complains saying that is cheating. Sung Jian says that he should have paid more attention, and the teacher told him to always stay vigilant. Yun Wook is annoyed, saying this is unbelievable. Sung Jian tells him to team up with somebody else if he's angry. A car pulls up to school, and we see K-min is already there, so Jae wonders who it is. As we see Misun come out of the car, she asks Sung Jian how he is doing, calling him a kid. He pouts, saying he told her not to call him that in public. Then she compliments Soon Jin, and she turns into a completely different person after receiving the compliment. Jae is confused. Misun sighs, saying that it's good that she left them with Hong, and she wishes their youngest would take after them. Then she tells Yoon Wook to join her guild, and that she will treat him as good as a real older sister. Sung Jian says, "Older sister my ass, you are an old lady." Then she flames him for being a loser. She starts to tell embarrassing stories about him, and how he got rejected. And they continue bantering for a bit, taking shots at one another. Jae says that he heard that she really adored her nephew, and he thought they would be more heartwarming, but they are pretty ordinary, which shows that they are close with one another. Hong steps out, telling everybody that Misun brought food, so let's eat. Then he calls for Jae and K-min to come here. Misun tells them that she bought the Songpa Bangi Dong dungeon, but she thinks that the government might try to take over it, due to the other dungeon incident. And thanks to that, other guilds were hesitant to bid, so she did not have to pay much for it. And the assumed rank of the dungeon lowered as well. Hong asks about the official evaluation, and she says because of the Myung dungeon break from before, the rank evaluation was pushed off. Hong says that they should try to get into the Bangi Dong dungeon ASAP. Then asks Jae if he has any idea what his brother's journal entry meant, saying they failed. Jae says no, as his heart starts to sink, since he did not write that diary entry in his previous timeline. The next day, we see Jae opening a marker, saying that since they must be used to the mana hiding runes and support runes, it's time to move on. K-min raises her hand, and he asks what her question is. Misun watches from the back, saying he's handsome, but she cannot trust him. She says that both her youngest and Hong lack awareness. K-min asks how many runes he knows, and he asks why she is curious. She says it's only natural for his students to be curious about their master's skill. He laughs, saying not to say something so scary. He's not a mage, nor has he signed a contract, so don't call him master. Misun pops her bubble gum, saying that no matter how she looks at it, Jae is suspicious. Everybody turns and looks at her, and she quickly covers her mouth, embarrassed, saying that she's sorry and it's just a bad habit. Jae continues his lesson, saying that he's going to teach them a shadow rune. He draws it, then smiles, saying that's easy to do, right? And they say that he's the nerd emoji in human form. K-min asks what it does, and he tells her just to draw it. She asks why he can't just tell them, and he says there's no fun in that. Then tells them to draw it. They all start trying to draw the rune, and Jae walks around. He tells Jinwoo that it's much easier than the mana hiding rune. Jinwoo agrees. Jae starts barking at him, saying that it's a simple rune, so he should know how to draw it very quickly, as there are still more runes for him to learn, so he doesn't have the luxury of practicing all day. He seems really happy about the advice. Jae then walks over to Sion, and says that she did a good job drawing it, but tells her to activate the rune. She starts to do it, and Misun is surprised, saying that her vision is blurred, as Sion starts to fade out. Jae explains how the rune melds the caster with the shadows, so it's not that good when it's bright, but when it gets dark, the effect is nuts. He rips the paper, and she fades back to normal. Jae asks her how she thinks she can utilize the rune. She says that she does not know, then starts to sulk. He says there's nothing wrong with not knowing, and he does not mean to pressure her. She starts to break down, and he turns into a wacky inflatable arm man, saying that it's okay. Misun asks about the mana hiding rune. He says it's just as the name implies, it just hides mana. Then asks if she hasn't heard from Sung Jian, about how it saved the students back in the Myung incident. She says she hasn't heard anything about runes from him. When she asked, everybody kept changing the subject, and she was worried that Sung Jian developed some PTSD. Hong looks over at her like he has no idea what she's talking about. She completely misunderstands, and then asks if he has silenced Sung Jian, telling him to tell her what happened. It jumps to Hong explaining to Jae that K-min's family has had archmages with the same attribute for 3 generations now. It's rare, even on an international level. He says that even though they are lacking in experience, the family's reputation is more than sufficient. Hong asks Jae if he understands what he means, and Jae says he has no idea. Hong asks again if he really doesn't know why he's telling him, and Jae says that he has no clue. Hong explains to him that it means that his rune is something that an archmage has vouched for, which means that other mages and people from the Ark might try to pursue him. Jae sips his tea, saying to just announce that Kamin was the one who discovered it, and he'll be safe. Hong barks at him, saying that he should not live like that, and that it is his achievement, and the mage who made it, and then asks if he thought he silenced the students. Jay asks if he didn't. Hong says, he hasn't, they must have just not said anything, since they knew the value of the rune. Hong tells him not to worry, as he will make sure that his name will be on the history books. Jay starts to develop a guilty conscience, saying that he's taking away so many achievements right now. He's taking away the French Archmage's mana hiding rune, along with Sion's shadow rune, and the other ones that he's going to yank as well. The massive amount of royalties that other people had from them. He starts to debate it in his head, he wonders how much money he would truly be taking away. Hong sees that he is deep in thought, but after a bit, Jay tells him that he's looking forward to it. Hong says he's not sure what he thought about, but it seems good enough. Then says they should go out for a meal. We see Sion's guild starting to set up vacation stuff outside of the Minecraft starter house. Hong steps outside, asking what is going on, saying that it's like a different area now. Missin asks if their meeting finished. Hong barks at her, saying that this is the school's holy ground. She tells him that he can get reported for child abuse with how barren this area is, and that being in this place will be bad for Soon Jin's skin care. Sung Jian asks about him, and she turns over to look at him, and then asks who he is again. I like their banter. She asks one of her guildies if that's the last box, and he says yes. She tells him to make sure to organize everything properly. Jay wonders where she got all of her supplies from, and she tells him that she installed a subspace. She tells him it's not public yet, but since her company developed it anyway, she's using it first. She tells him to let her know if he needs anything. He tells her it'll be alright. And that's because he's already using one that her guild developed in the future. She stretches her hand out, saying that they haven't formally introduced themselves yet. And she tells him who she is and how she's been helping Hong with a lot of things. She smiles, then whispers at him, saying that she plans on helping him too. Jay seems happy and says that he's looking forward to working with her too. Later on, we see Jay drawing runes in a notebook. Sung Jian walks in, asking if his main weapon is a sword. Jay says no, and then goes to say that he uses spears, but realizes that it would be suspicious. So just asks why. Sung Jian and Soon Jin both ask for him to teach them. He says they both have Hong to teach them, so why do they need him? Sung Jian says that the principal uses a spear, and he told them to learn from Jay since he'll be away from school. Jay gets annoyed by this. He goes to talk to Hong, who says that he was going to tell him, since there are more teachers, he doesn't need to be here all the time. Jay says if he's going to be gone, then at least bring more employees. Hong says they can't hire anybody official, since they don't want the runes to leak to the public. Jay glares, saying that Dae Sion's hunters are trustworthy. Hong says that Sion wouldn't give up her hunters, plus there are still outsiders among her group. Jay asks why he thinks he's so qualified. Hong tells him that he can see it in his eyes, then starts to rizz him up, saying that the eyes are the window to the soul. Jay wonders how he became the strongest in the world. Hong says that he's not letting them use mana, so just fix their postures. Or he can just fight them for training, as he's sure they'll learn from being beat as well. Hong laughs, saying he'll let them know, and they'll probably start sneaking up on him for his head. Jay asks what he means, and Hong tells him that he told the students he'll give them something in return for bringing him Jay's head. They both have an awkward stare down. Jay asks about Hyun. Hong tells him that he left her to chime in. Since mages are similar to healers, he tells Jay that he's heading out now, as he's going to the Songpa dungeon. Jay asks to be taken with him, but Hong gives him the superhero stare, saying that it might be too dangerous, and he should go in first to make sure it's not suspicious. Then he puts his hand on Jay's shoulder, saying he'll be back soon, and to take care of the kids for him. Jay sighs and tells him to be fast. The next morning, we see outside that Minson has spruced up the place a lot more, even bringing a coffee truck. Jay wonders when it got here, and then clears his throat, telling all the students to remember one thing. The one who survives is the strongest. Sung Jian tells him that he doesn't sound cool saying something like that. Jay makes a serious expression, asking if he's ever been inside a dungeon. All the students see on his face that he's serious, and one of them raises his hand, saying that he has. His name is Sol Han Song. We will call him Han. Jay asks how it was, and Han looks a bit scared. He says that it's different, and that's all he has to say. Jay tells him that there are actually theories that say that dungeons are a different dimension. He recalls June giving a speech, how there are no humans in the dungeon, so you must give up being a human in order to survive. Jay tells them these words, but paraphrases it a bit, Kind of like when you chat GPT an essay. He tells them that the principal told them to stop sparring each other. The students say yes. He says that he is going to teach them similarly to how he teaches, but he won't be as nice as him. He raises his sword into the air, saying that he will awaken their instincts, and he won't kill them, so try their best. Inside of the Bangui-dong district, which is located inside of Songpa, we see Hong and Minson walking down the street. They said they were going to reassess all the dungeons soon. She tells them they should have done it sooner. And then they complain about the foreign hunters, since all they did was flame the Korean ranking system of dungeons. Hong asks her what she thinks. She's a bit caught off guard, then says that she doesn't need to lie about the dungeon rank to make money. Hong jokingly says he must have underestimated her, and she says of course, and will apologize. She pulls out a recorder, and looks at the portal. She starts to document the day they enter the portal, along with who is going in, and they head inside. On the other side, we see a grassy field, and Minson looks a bit off. She asks Hong to say something, and he tells her he's just embarrassed. And that C-rank dungeons aren't even this relaxed. Hong asks about information on the monsters in here. One of the guild members says they're insect types, but there's not many of them. He then tells him how they are herbivores. Hong says that is rare. The man then tells him they saw them eating leaves, and they paid no attention to the meat and blood they brought with them. While they were curious about humans, they never attacked. Their bodily liquids are also harmless and not acidic. And the core for the dungeon has no monsters surrounding it. Hong says they've been thorough, then looks down, thinking about the dungeon and how it's so peaceful, then kills one of the bugs wondering why Ark paid so much attention to this place. Minson screams, and he asks her if she doesn't like bugs. She says anything with more than 2 legs freaks her out. Then he raises one of the bugs into her face, causing her to die on the spot from a heart attack. He laughs at her death, and then they continue on. He notices the bugs acting weird, telling everyone to wait. And then he smells something foul, then tells them that there's a Discord mod ahead. We see Minson is shocked. Hong says there's a reason they didn't react to the meat, as the only thing they enjoy eating is rotten meat. As they munch on a decomposing corpse, it flash forwards to 2044 in his previous timeline as June is telling Jae about a dungeon in the Songpa district. He sighs, asking her why she's doing this so many times. Then jokes around with her. And she says that she is not joking, and she needs to clear it. He stands up telling her that he isn't joking either and then shoves her out of the room, saying he needs to work. She says this is physical abuse as he pushes her to the door, then tries telling him that she needs to raid the dungeon but he closes it on her face. He jolts awake, then sits up saying that was one hell of a dream. He wonders why a person who never listened to him waited for permission. Thinking about it makes him annoyed, and he decides to just get to work. We hear the students asking if he can tell Hong to hurry up. He tells them that he does not have his number, so he's not sure what he's been doing for the last 4 days. But if they have the energy to talk they must be rested right, and we see that they are all gassed out on the floor. Sung Jian apologizes saying they're not sure what they did but they're sorry. Soon Jin says that she deluded herself into thinking she could hit him. Jae gets annoyed saying that they are exhausting. He doubts they were acting the same way with the principal. One of the students tells him that Hong never pushed him this hard, and then Hyun appears asking if they would like some water. And they see her as an angel. They all start pawing out of their gourd and ask if, and then say that she acts really healer-like. She says that she feels bad for resting alone. Then a taxi starts to pull up. The taxi driver barks at the girl in the back saying that he only brought her here since she's a student. Asking what business she is all the way out here in the first place. She steps out of the car and Hyun is surprised. Asking why she is here, and we see a familiar looking face. The little girl tells Hyun that she came because she wanted to see her, and that she left school early. Hyun apologizes to Jae, saying that this is her younger sister, and she tells her sister to greet Jae properly. We see the little girl bowing, saying it's nice to meet him and she's heard that he saved her sister's life. Jae says now he understands why he had that dream. As the girl is none other than June. Jae says he has a bad feeling about this and says that it's weird seeing her respectful to him. Along with her smiling so much, also he never even knew she had a sister. He asks her if that's why she came here and she says yes. Then she tells him that she was wondering if he would come with them to the district office since they needed someone who was a C rank or higher. Jae asks if she's a hunter. June proudly says that she has awakened. Hyun is surprised, asking since when. June tells her it was today during PE class. Hyun asks if that is why the teachers let her out. She says yes, since they told her to get registered. Hyun then asks Yoon Wook how it was when he first awakened. Jae is surprised that she isn't calling him a fat ass, saying maybe Hyun's death is what made Yoon-wook get fat in the first place. One of the students tells her she will be fined if she doesn't get registered within a week. Hyun says she registered way later than her awakening. The girl tells her she went with the principal and he must have taken care of it for her. She says that Han said he took care of his as well. Han tells them that Hong helped with suing the guild and got him compensated. Jae tells Chae-min to go register with June. K-min says she is an S rank and Jae asks if she is bragging. She says that it would get troublesome if her name is listed there, as the press loves scandals, asking Jae why he won't do it. He tells her that he can't. She asks why not. He tells her he is broke and phoneless. She gives him a pity stare, then tells him that June chose him already, so just to go with her. June says that she was thinking about something, then asks Jae to take her in as a disciple. He starts to feel panicked, asking if she is talking to him. Her eyes full of hope say yes and she wants to be his disciple. He calms himself down thinking about it. June is a genius. She is loyal, so there are plenty of ways she will be useful. He just needs to get over this discomfort as it is a mental issue. He quickly tells her no, and she is shocked, asking why not. He tells her that he is not a mage so he can't take in a disciple. She tells him that he teaches everybody else. He tells her to just come after she graduates middle school. She pouts, saying she read online that the golden time is within a month of awakening. She keeps yapping and Jae turns, asking if anybody else believes this shit. K-min and Hyun both say no. One of the other students says that she has, then hands him a flyer that she got this morning. Just like before, I am not reading all of that. The girl says that she only kept it because there weren't trash cans. Jae shows it to June, telling her that this is a scam, and to just wait for Hong to come back. He then claps, telling everyone that they've all had enough rest. Then tells June she can stay and watch beside her sister. Sung Jian says she won't enroll after she sees how the classes are. Jae tells him that he thinks it will interest her more since it's fun. Sung Jian says of course he finds it fun. Then they continue practice, and we hear them screaming with joy. That night at a restaurant we see Hong being told about June, and he says that he knows who she is, and he feels bad since she and Hyun live on their own. K-min says that she is quite gutsy as she asked Jae to be his disciple. K-min laughs, saying that she didn't even give up after seeing how Jae trained the kids. She has never seen him so flustered. Hong laughs, saying he wishes he didn't miss it. Jae reaches into his pocket, telling them to look at this, but Hong says he has something to show him first, showing him the rotting corpse inside of the Songpa dungeon. He asks Jae if he recognizes this person. Jae says he can't, and Hong finds it surprising, saying that it's Kim, the one who sacrificed himself to let Jae escape from Ark. A chill runs down Jae's spine, as Hong says he's surprised he didn't recognize him. Then asks Jae who he really is. The waitress comes over, putting their food on the table, breaking the awkward silence. Hong asks Jae if there's nothing he wants to say. He replies saying that they should stop this. Hong tells him that he's just getting started. Jae sighs, saying that Kim is a girl, so he doesn't know why he's showing him some random guy's body. Jae did some research before borrowing this identity, as he didn't want to leave it up to luck, so we see him on his watch. He searched for obituaries, and since Hong is a boomer he just refers to everybody by their last names. One of them is named Kim and he is abroad, while another died in a dungeon break. The last one is a police officer that Hong worked with on multiple cases. Her records disappeared due to her being undercover. Jae thinks it's a bit sad how she died. His con man flashback ends, then he asks Hong why he's showing him this guy, saying surely he didn't kill him just to test him. Hong says no, he just found him inside of the dungeon. Even though it was being guarded around the clock, they still found him inside. Then he shows Jae a rune, asking if he knows about it. Jae asks if he only probed him because he wanted help. K-min is confused and then yells, saying that she does not understand, a thing they have been saying since earlier. Asking why it matters what gender Kim is, Jae asks her if she is drunk. She tells him not to change the subject. He reminds her that he is from the Ark. She says that he's never told her directly before, but that she would be a fool not to know, after the way he acted at the research center. Jae starts to get annoyed at Hong since he brought him all the way here without explaining anything. We see it jumps to later. After Jae has explained it all to K-min, she points at Hong, saying surely he's done suspecting him now. Hong starts to reach into his back pocket, saying that it's not much of an apology, but whips out forms of identification for Jae. He says the details were filled in with what he said while being interrogated. He also gives him a hunter's license, and even though it is a D rank he can update it later, along with a bank book and a check card. Jay looks at it asking if this is the correct amount. Hong says of course. He made sure to calculate it correctly, and he should have already taken the money out that he spent this month, so think of it as a favor. Hong says he knows he's happy, but he could at least look at it after they eat. Jay wonders if his face looks that happy, and the atmosphere for every single one of them is very cheerful. Jay says, ignoring the money issue, the fact that Hong gave him this means that he's finally accepting that he was one of those kids from ARC. We see Hong looking at a flyer that Herman brought. He gets a bit nauseous asking why this shit is written so formally. Jay tells him that it's an ARC research center specifically. A branch to recruit new members. Hong asks why they are acting like a third-rate cult. Jay says that it's just to increase their selection pool, so they could find better test subjects. As one of their main goals was to create an artificial awakening method. Min and Hong are both surprised by this. As chills run down their spine, Hong asks him what he means by an artificial awakening. Jay asks if he really did not know, saying that the children were kidnapped, solely for this purpose. Then asks him what kind of place he thought ARC was. Hong says he thought it was just a crime syndicate, and Jay says he's not wrong. Hong looks down frustrated and then explains how 2 years ago, somebody he knew that was dispatched to the States was slaughtered along with his team. So he went around the world tracking his corpse, and ended up in South America. That is where he first learned of ARC, but the deeper he searched the more he realized there were roots all over the world. Ranging from all types of violent crimes. All of the countries they were located in had already investigated them. Jay says he's starting to understand it. The ARC that he knows was focused on research. Min then raises her tablet asking Jay if he can tell which rune this is. He says it's not one that he has ever seen before, and Hong gets surprised that there are runes he doesn't know of. Jay shrugs, saying he can't remember all of them. Then does a double take at the tablet, saying that he can just figure out what kind of rune it is. The next day we see Min raising the trunk of her car, telling the kids it's time to eat. The manhwa quickly shifts genre to a zombie apocalypse. As the zombies charge towards the back of the car for the final survivor. Jay asks Min if she brought everything he asked for. She cheerfully says yes while handing it to him. He tells her she did good, she likes the compliment. He hands her a notepad with runes saying to copy these and stick them on all the meat. She wonders why. Jay says he doesn't know why they were so sloppy and in a rush. So he had to draw several versions. Min jokingly asks if he made the rune, and he tells her to get to work. As all the students are enjoying their meals, we see Jin Woo look over to his side as he notices Min and Jay. Curious, he heads over, asking them why they are putting a rune on the meat. Jay says that it's for a test. Jin Woo asks if it's to create a new rune, saying that they all look similar. Jay quickly tries to shoo him off, saying that Min hasn't eaten yet, so not to bother her. But she tells him that it's fine, then asks how his food was. Jin Woo says it was good since all Hong brings them is meaty food, rather than vegetables. He asks if Hong is back yet. Min nervously laughs, saying he sure is taking a while. We learn that Hong went back to the dungeon to double check. Jin Woo starts to smell something. Then asks Jay if he thinks there's something that reeks. Jay glances behind him, saying that they are using runes to rapidly decompose meat. We see a younger Jay from his timeline, asking Hong if he thinks it's a good idea for him to get a hunter's license. Hong is surprised, saying that he thought he did not want to be a hunter. Then he sits up asking if he is being bullied at school. Jay asks him what he's talking about, and picks up the remote, saying there's just too much competition in the civil service exam. Hong tells him that he can make a spot for him, and Jay says that sounds like he's trying to get dragged to another hearing. And he only asked because he's wondering if he can get additional points for getting a hunter's license. Hong thinks about it and says that he's not sure. Jay reminds him that he is the most influential person in the management agency. Hong says that is true, but he's not in charge of recruiting. He tells him that he'll look for some information. So just go ahead and get the license with the highest rank he can. Jay says that sounds like a pain, as he just wants to get a D rank. Hong is shocked, saying as his son he can't go for D rank. Jay sighs, saying that he didn't inherit his skills since he's adopted. Hong sighs too and then pats his head, saying that he can't win against him. Back to the current timeline, Hong says that there was somebody inside of the dungeon. Jay asks what he means and Hong tells him that although they were dead they found somebody inside of the dungeon. And that the Daeseon Guild said they will investigate it. So they just have to wait. Jay looks a bit worried. Hong tells him that they should just prepare for the dungeon field training. Jay asks if he's going to be doing it soon, saying that with his skills, even B rank would be considered free. Hong asks him what he is saying, handing him the paper, saying that he is the one who will be going. Jae is confused and Hong says that he should be capable enough. Jae tells him that if he's going to make him work like a dog, he should increase his salary. Hong pulls the frugal option, saying that operating a school is expensive. Jae says they don't even have a lot of students. Hong snaps his fingers, saying they still have to pay for building construction. Jae asks when, but Hong starts spitballing, trying to come up with an excuse about how there are dungeons and it increases the rate. Jae tells him just to clear the dungeons, then Hong gives a love tap to the paper he handed him, saying that this is what it's for. Jae says it would surely be faster if he cleared them. And Hong laughs, saying no, since they need results. It is a model school that will be built using his name. Many people disagreed, saying that hunters don't need a school. But they reluctantly agreed since he was the principal. So that's why he has to show results. If he or Chaimin went in, people would consider it a skewed result. He also says how the number of awakeners increases yearly, but the dungeon casualties also increase at a similar pace, and the hunters are becoming more unsociable as their skills stagnate. The school must not fail if they are to protect the newly awakened ones. Hong takes a sip of his coffee, saying there's a more straightforward way to do this. With a sparkle in his eyes, Jae asks what it is. Hong tells him that they can announce that they will be teaching runes exclusively at their school. Jae, with his eyes still sparkling, says that he will absolutely try his best. It cuts to later as Hong is telling the students about their dungeon run. He says it's been 3 months since the school opened, so it's time for a test, and that Jae will be going into the dungeon with them. So listen to him. Jae tells them that the day of the practice training will be held on the 15th of June. It's the C-rank dungeon beside the school. Since he is there to grade them, he'll only help for dire moments, so to form parties and clear the dungeon. But there are 4 things they must grasp. That is rank, environment, the location of the core, and the monster types. He tells them that the place has a natural environment similar to Earth, but due to dimensional distortions there are also bizarre cases. He tells them to think of the dungeons they've seen in the media. While he is talking, Sion starts to have a flashback. Sion recalls her grandpa showing her his unique magic, and he fondly calls out to her, saying that she will become a mage that will surpass him, and that he believes in her. And even without him, she will be okay, and that she can do it. Some of these are also just her mental illness, using the voice of her grandpa. Jae tells them that this will do for a rough explanation, and they should go eat lunch. As in the afternoon they will be doing interviews, and tells them to think of what they lack in the face of a pixie. I do not know what this means. The students head outside, and Jae notices that Sion is not moving from her seat. He awkwardly asks her if she is going to be going for lunch, but he sees that she is crying. Panicked, thinking that he made her cry, he asks her what's wrong, suggesting that he can call Hong. She wipes away her tears. And with a worried tone, she tells him that she wants to quit school. He is confused, and she says that no matter how she thinks about it, she does not have the talent, nor does she want to become a burden, so she just plans to quit. Jae hits her with the triple W, wait, what, why? Asking if someone said something to her. She quickly says no, it's just that she can't use magic properly. He asks if she isn't aware about how fast her casting speed is. She awkwardly looks to the side, realizing that she does, and he asks if she thinks Jin Woo can't use magic either. She tells him that he has nothing to do with it, since he only awakened 6 months ago, and she's been awakened for over 10 years, and that she even knows unique magic. She says that she understands all of it, even the formula, but she can't even use it, despite understanding it. Full of anger and sadness, she clenches her fist. He calls out to her, asking where she learned unique magic. She tells him that her grandpa taught her before he died, and he asks her what attribute he was. She replies, saying that her grandpa used light. Jae laughs, telling Sion that she actually is very talented. She's taken aback, and he tells her that he will make her an archmage. We see Jae telling Hong that Sion is talking about dropping out. But he talked to her. Hong asks what the reasoning is. Jae tells her that she thinks she has no talent. Hong says that her standards are too high because of who her grandpa was. He doesn't know anyone more strict than he was. Jae asks if he knew him personally. Hong eats his food, saying that he knew Sin's father. He last saw her grandpa when his friend died, only hearing about him again at his funeral. He was very strict with his son, but seemed to have eased up with Sion. He was a father who wanted to see his son succeed as much as him. But his son had inherited none of his father's talents. And due to this his son tried to prove himself. He was overzealous and ended up dying inside of a dungeon. He regretted how he treated his son and raised his granddaughter Sion. In the peace of his hometown, he died a hero helping civilians evacuate during a dungeon break. After that someone else took care of Sion until she came here. Jae asked when Mr. Park died. Hong says it was around when Sion turned 10. He asks who the guardian was, and Hong says that it was Mr. Park's guild lawyer. Jae asks if this means that Sion learned her magic solely from her grandpa. He says yes, asking Jae if it bothers him. Jae says he has a feeling that he was not any less strict with her, as it's common among the mages to force their child on the path of being a mage even if they don't want to. And now he is not certain, but he does not want to mess with her PTSD. He tells Hong to take care of her, and Hong just makes a Minecraft villager sound. Jae asks what that response means, and Hong says that he feels like he'll take care of her even if he didn't. Jae doesn't reply and Hong smirks, saying he knew so. Hong says that he expected as much from her homeroom teacher. Jae asks when he became a homeroom teacher. Hong tells him that that's what everybody considers him as already. Jae barks, saying to raise his salary if he wants him to be a homeroom teacher. Hong says that lunchtime is over and reminds Jae that he has to go give a lecture. Jae turns into a vengeful ghost, telling him to up his salary. Hong ignores him while Jae gives him a death glare from behind. Jae puts his foot up, saying that he'll go talk to the kids, and he'll make sure that Hong takes care of the non-mage kids. Hong feels a chill run down his spine, and he starts to plead with Jae, saying he can't do this to him, and Jae walks off. What the eagle doin'? It jumps to the classroom as Jae is asking the students what they think about it. Asking if they think they can survive in a dungeon. Jin-woo asks if they are supposed to be more focused on their survival than the raid itself. Jae says he didn't expect them to come up with such a great answer, so they should skip that topic. Jin-woo is confused, asking why Jae told them to think it over. And it's all gloomy. Jae sparkles, saying that it's so they can realize how useless they are. And if they really thought it over, then it's good. At first everybody is useless. A hunter needs to know how to find their weakness and make up for it. Jin-woo asks where he should start, saying he's lost. Jae raises a feather, asking if they know what elements of magic they are. There is nothing more subject to change than a mage's value in society. Right now mages are highly valued. But once the mana hiding rune is developed, their values go down. Maybe you're curious on how mages adapt. And since they've already been isolated, they double down on it. The countless magic research societies disappeared, as they all began trying strange things to pass their elements to their offsprings. The archmage in France studied how mana works and revealed to the public how to find their element. Other mages learned from him and analyzed their children's mana to keep those who had the same elements as them and abandon those who didn't. They sent them to the Hunter Academy. Jae tells the students they will find their elements today. Kaemin is surprised and she says she doesn't want to interrupt, but saying that she's only aware of finding your element by feeling it. Jae thinks about it, wondering how to explain this. So tells her this is a method developed by the same mage who made the runes. Kaemin starts drooling out of her mouth, saying they should give it a try then. He explains the whole process, but I don't think this is important at all. It's pretty much them just putting a feather into water, then imbuing it with mana. Then afterwards it will sprout with the element that they possess. In Kaemin's case we see roots. Everybody is shocked and Jae says now they can see how easy it is. Kaemin starts to press him, asking who the mage is. And Jae ignores her. She tells him to stop playing dumb and to please tell her who the mage is. We see that she is determined to know. Jae tells her he is dead and she has a blank expression on her face. Then immediately feels guilty of pressuring him about it. Sion holds a feather and begins to imbue her mana into it. She says nothing is happening. And Jae tells her just to keep trying. Eventually the feather begins to grow black. She asks Jae what this means. He tells her he knew it was an element problem. As her element is shadow, the opposite of light. It's not that she wasn't good enough for her grandpa, it's simply because their elements did not match. He tells Jin-woo to give it a try as well. And he begins to imbue his mana into it as a blue flame appears. Jae tells him that's a real fire and to let go of the feather now. Jae tells him that it's not hot at all. We get a nice image of him being the light and Sion being the shadow. It cuts to later, outside of the classroom. Sion is saying that she's been thinking about it. And it's true that she can't use her grandpa's magic. So she has decided to look at it from a different view. Jae tells her that she must have put a lot of thought into this. She smiles, saying yes. Saying that it's a shame that she can't use it, but she doesn't want her grandpa's magic to be forgotten. And how Kaemin told them that many spells have been lost due to this. She doesn't want to become a statistic. Jae asks what she wants to do. She confidently says that she wants to become Jin-woo's teacher. Jae is surprised that she came to him with a perfect solution, asking if she's sure that she wants to teach him all of her grandpa's spells. She says yes, and it's not like Jin-woo is a completely random person. He asks if she is sure since she has not known Jin Woo for that long. She says that she is sure. He says that she may be saying that now, but her feelings might change when she sees him using the magic. He tells him that she needs to see someone else using it to truly let go. He realizes that she wasn't as mentally exhausted as he thought. And maybe it's because she is young that she has grown a lot. Or maybe he just has a talent for counseling. He wonders how Hong dealt with her in his past timeline, saying maybe he just left her alone. But he says anyways, this is good news for Jin Woo. We see Jin Woo being told about it. He says that he doesn't want it. Both Jae and Kaemin are confused, asking why. He says that it's not that he looks down on Seon, but her becoming his teacher is kind of weird. Kaemin asks why that matters, then says that he just might not understand what this means. He says that he does understand since he is a mage, but still he just does not want to do it. Jae asks for the reason, and Jin Woo says that no matter how much he thinks about it, treating a friend as a teacher is weird. Awkward silence falls on the room, and Jae gets annoyed, saying that this is a stupid ass reason, and asks if that's all there is to it. Jin Woo says that he knows it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it's also about how much the magic means to Seon. Most mages awaken at a young age, sometimes as early as when they start to walk. Jin Woo awakened way too late for a mage, and maybe that's why he seems so naive. He says that he just doesn't want Seon to be disappointed in him, and he doesn't want to get exhausted trying to keep up with her. Nor does he want things to become awkward between the two of them. He doesn't have any grand ambitions to become an archmage or master unique magic. He's okay with being ordinary. Jae tells him that he'll respect his decision and he can take his break. Kaemin panics, asking Jae why he's just giving up like this, saying that he must understand the value of Mr. Park's unique magic. Jae then asks her if Jin Woo is really as untalented as he claims. She says that she doesn't know, since it's subjective, so it is difficult to explain to someone who is not a mage. For basic magic, you can master it with time and effort, but unique magic does not work that way. Someone who can't use basic magic might have severe post-nut clarity, becoming an archmage who excels in unique magic. While it might also be the other way around for somebody else, they will never learn anything about unique magic. She says that it's simply just luck. He asks her about Jin Woo, and she says that they won't know until they try. And while it's not good to set limits on oneself, she understands where he is coming from. As bearing such a huge legacy would be too big of a burden for a student to handle alone. She asks if Seon said it could only be Jin Woo. Jae thinks about it and then sighs, saying that he's at a loss here. He recalls when he was a teenager, and Hong said that he would support him regardless of what he chose. If he wants to go to college and work at a company, that's fine. And if he wants to become a hunter, he'll make sure that happens too. And that if someone bullies him, he'll make sure that he'll take care of that. He can make a couple people disappear. Jae coldly says no thanks, and Hong asks if he hates him. Saying that he's human too, so it hurts when he talks to him like that. And tries to teach him how to strangle somebody. Jae pulls his hand away, saying enough, and Hong asks if he doesn't hate him anymore. Jae says that he's being a freak. And he wonders what Hong would do in this position. And then decides that it's best for him to do it. And he leaves the classroom saying he can't do it exactly like Hong would, but he can confront them just like he would. He calls out to Seon, telling her that Jin Woo said no. She is at a loss for words, asking why. Jae tells her that he just feels unworthy of learning from her. He believes that he lacks the talent to be her student, and that he wouldn't be able to face her, or something like that. Seon asks if he tried to persuade him. Jae says no, since it is Jin Woo's feelings. She says that he told her that he would make her an archmage. And Jae says that's because he came after already knowing the answers. He clears his throat saying that she's his student, but Jin Woo would be her student. And she starts to understand. He tells her that her first task as a teacher is to be honest and persuade the student. She grabs onto her notebook and then yoinks a page out and starts to eat it. Jae says that she is definitely not all there upstairs. Seon smiles, saying that she will go. And Jae says that the mental illness is strong with this one. It cuts to another flashback of Jae as a kid in his timeline. Hong tells him they need to talk, but Jae says that he's got nothing to say since he's not his real son anyways. Hong barks at him. And Jae is taken aback since he's never seen him like this. Hong realizes that his anger got the best of him and goes to take a knee. He tells Jae that he is still his son. Jae asked if he's only like this due to the adoption. Saying that he'll leave once he becomes an adult. Hong calls out to him again, and Jae says to stop saying his name as it's not meant to be said by him, since he's not his son, so don't get it twisted. He says he's like a stray dog he found in the street. Asking if that's right. Hong says he doesn't know where he heard that, but Jae cuts him off saying that he's heard it from Hong's friends. And he understands why the other kids don't want their parents to mingle with an orphan. Hong calmly tells him that he did not bring him here as a replacement. Jae asked if he did it solely to write a nice story about how he adopted a poor orphan boy. Hong thinks about it and tells him that he ran away from his orphanage when he was 19 on the moment he awakened. And he saw himself in Jae the day he found him, and wished that he wouldn't walk the same path he did. And that is why he decided to become his father, and he hugs him. Flashback ends as Kaimin is saying that she can't put her finger on what type of person Jae is. She doesn't know if he loves the students or not. Jae tells her it's more of a fondness. She says that she doesn't disagree with them and asks how Jin Woo is doing. He tells her that he just helps guide them. And then from his experience, the kids are emotional and they often get too unstable with even the smallest poke. Jin Woo might have been worried because he let Sion down. Kaimin says she understands, and Jae continues saying that they just need to form a bond so that even if they're disappointed it won't matter. And then we see them both crying and Jin Woo says that he never told them about this, and they both decide that they're going to give it their all to one another. 2 days later we see Jin Woo formally bowing to Sion, calling her teacher, asking her to look at his paper. She proudly takes the paper and tells him that he's doing much better with this one. Jae says this is a mess. But that makes him feel better seeing her smile so brightly, and that if there's still a problem here, it would be Sung Jian. We see him and Han sparring with one another and they're talking about how they just traded knocks. Jae starts to fade out saying he can't believe the vibes are so different. Sung Jian then asks Jae if he or Han won. Jae says to do rock paper scissors as that's the only way to determine who won. Sung Jian asks who fights like that and Jae says he does. Then we see Kaimin's car pull up and the students greet her. They ask if she brought what she said she would and she says yes, dropping a fat stack of paper onto the table saying it's a standard contract. She says that she brought a contract that she used so they can edit to fit their situation. Both Sion and Jin Woo are taken back by this. Kaimin apologizes saying it's short as she learned it from her father. Jin Woo asks if family members write contracts. Jae reminds them that lawsuits happen all the time between teacher and student. So this helps with that. Kaimin says that they should be thankful it ends in a lawsuit as recently somebody was stabbed. They made their niece do their bidding for 10 years over magic. The girl in question just wondered why her aunt was shit talking to her when she had a knife in her hand. She will not likely be found guilty. Jin Woo is scared, asking if this is how mages normally are. Sion says that if he has an issue with her to let her know before he stabs her. He quickly says that he does not plan to do that. He says that this contract is giving him a headache since it's too long. Sion says that she would have told Kaimin they were fine if she knew this is what she meant by contract. Kaimin is surprised, asking if they're not going to write one. Sion says they will, but it doesn't need to be so complicated. She starts to write it out. It pretty much just says that all of her grandpa's magic will be taught to Jin Woo. And she recognizes his ownership of it. Only when both he and she agree can they be a new successor, and if one of them die the other may choose the successor. She snaps the pen and covers her thumb in ink, putting it by her name. Kaimin is surprised, asking if this is it, saying it's so short. Sion says this is all they need, asking Jin Woo if he needs to add anything. He says that he's not too familiar, but says his successor would just be a student, right? She says yes, and he says it's her grandpa's magic so she should feel free to teach anybody with more talent than him, and he signs. Kaimin has a mental breakdown and tries to convince them to write more specifics, instead of being so broad, as they know this is legally binding. Sion says yes, and they were hoping that she could be their notary, as with the Grand Mage's approval there won't be any legal issues. Jae says even if it turns out sour they'll learn from this. Sion then tries to give it to Jae, telling him to sign it too. He asks why and she says that she heard 3 witnesses is a good number and she's gonna ask Hong to sign it too. Jae signs it and says that regardless of him nobody will be able to disregard it if both Hong and Kaimin have both signed it as well. It cuts to some time later as Jae is outside drinking his tea, admiring how peaceful and quiet it is, but he's confused on why it is so peaceful. We see him talking to Hong about Ark, and Hong tells him that it is still being investigated by Mason. That aside, there will be a test soon, asking how the kids are. He says that he only knows how the magic students are doing. Hong says he should be less cold and he should look after all of the students. Jae regrets talking to him. Hong says it's not like he's doing much and the classes are on hold due to the kids getting ready for the test. Jae says that's because he put all the prep work on it for him, and then Hong says that Sion is the one teaching magic anyways. Jae gets annoyed. Hong smiles and laughs, telling him to please keep working hard. Jae says that even if his senses as a hunter are ass, He feels weird being this restless, and wonders if it's because there is no work to do. Then says nah, as there's nobody that balances their work and life better than he does. Even though his vacation days are piling up. It's normal for people to forget about them when they're so focused on work. Then something clicks and he heads outside to see Jin Woo, asking if it works. Jae feels something bright as we see that Jin Woo has already used some of Sun's grandpa's magic. Jae is surprised, wondering if Jin Woo is a genius. Sion says that's not the case. Then changes to explaining how her grandpa's magic is used to brighten up dark places. And it reveals hidden things as well as traps. It starts to dissipate and she watches full of nostalgia. Saying that it's a great magic and laughs, asking if they agree. Hong spawns in with the thumbs up. Jae then calls out to Sion, asking her how the mana analysis is going. She says that she's working on it. Jae asks if Kaimin didn't teach her how to do it. Sion says that she did, but she just doesn't understand as it's different from how her grandpa explained it to her. He still finds it impressive that she was able to imitate light magic, even though her attribute is different. He tells her not to think about it too much. As if she gets hung up on it. It's not going to end up good. He asks if she's good with basic magic, and she says yes, but it's different. He drops to the ground and starts to dig out a hole. Saying the part about using magic is the same. He tells her to fill this hole with water, asking if she can do that. Startled, she says yes, and then quickly casts a water spell. He tells her to boil it now. And she starts to heat up the water. As it gets hotter and hotter, we see her drained a little bit and he tells her to stop. Asking if she understands it. He asks her to think about why she can use light magic, which is the opposite of darkness. He tells her that he's not sure since he's not a mage, but tells her to think about how water and fire are total opposites, and asks about their formulas. She says them aloud and she realizes what he's saying now. He tells her that sometimes you can create an opposite effect just by flipping the formula, telling her to start from there. He tells her that the rest will be up to her to figure out, and if she needs more help to ask Kaimin. She starts to ask if she can't just ask him. And he pushes her forehead back, which catches her off guard. He reminds her that he isn't a mage. And he says that she is scary when her bangs come down. Which is why he poked her. He says originally they were meant to be 10 kids in this high school's first generation. In the original timeline, he's not sure how many would have dropped out by now, after the Myung incident. Even now the classroom isn't packed and he wonders how it would be in the original timeline. He says he probably would have dropped out by now and that only the anxious students have left. They were originally supposed to struggle for a few years before the academy changed its name. He sees Hyun practicing her magic and calls out to her. She breaks her spell and he scoffs, saying that is a lack of concentration. She starts to tear up from his teasing. He says as a hunter she should always remain focused. She reminds him that she is a healer and he asks if healers don't go into dungeons. Telling her to try again and she does so. He thinks about something and asks her how June is doing. Saying that he heard that she went with Hong to be registered. She starts to grumble and says even though it's still her little sister, but gets cut off by Jae asking her what's wrong. She sighs, saying that she doesn't know where she keeps getting these weird ideas from. She barely stops her from putting her feet in ice before school. She keeps talking about how cold feet helps with mana circulation, and a bunch of other just useless stuff and sighs. Jae wonders if this is why he's been feeling restless these past few days, asking if she's mentioning anything about doing something for the buildup in her veins. Hyun says that June was talking about some kind of detox thing, and has been eating nothing but lettuce. Jae puts his hand on her shoulder, comforting her, and starts to think what will happen if June gets brought into a cult. Kaimin appears, asking if they're working hard. Jae ignores her since he is focused on June, as he wants to piggyback on her success. And he even has dreams about trying to keep her under wraps. It flashbacks us again to Jae as a child. Hong saying that he took a look at his homework and he asks him about what he wrote in the future profession slot. Jae asks if he seriously doesn't know as a hunter. Hong says that he just really wants to hear his explanation. Jae tells him he just wants a stable job and he doesn't want people to order him around, as that's what he wants to do instead. But he knows that employment in private companies is unstable. Hong asked him where he heard all of this and he says that it was the news. So Jae tells him that he's going to become a civil servant instead. He doesn't want to become the president because that seems like busy work. He just wants to become a middle-level manager, who passes his responsibilities to others. He keeps talking about all of this. And Hong starts to feel a little worried. Then thinks about it and pats Jae on the head, saying that if that is what he wants, he'll let him do whatever he wishes. Later in that same timeline, we see an older June asking why he didn't enroll in the academy. He tells her it's because he wants to become a civil servant, not a hunter. She is baffled, asking if Hong knows about this, and then tries to get him to go spar with her. But he tells her no as he has an exam coming up. She proudly tells him that if he becomes a hunter he won't have to do exams. He says if he does that he'll become stupid like her. Poor June caught astray. Later as an adult he says it seems they cleared the dungeon with great difficulties. And if they've come to reality after working under June then they're prepared to become a proper hunter. He asks them why they became hunters and why they want to continue it, saying that these are questions they need to seriously think about. And then they ask him why he did not become a hunter, saying he has the license and he has the skills. He bluntly tells him he doesn't like to fight and he doesn't like doing ignorant labor. Back to the current timeline, we see him on the other side of a street saying that he impulsively walked to June's middle school. But what now? He spots her across the street with a flyer in her hand, wondering if she's still buying into that shit. An older lady approaches her. We'll call her Scammer, asking if she's interested. Scammer says that she is also from where the paper is so she can tell her more about it. Jay looks up to see that it's not time to cross yet and gets annoyed. As soon as it is time to go, he quickly runs over calling out to June, who is surprised to see him. She asks him what he's doing here and he stumbles trying to find an answer. Scammer starts to ask if he is her teacher, saying that he's very handsome. He says he is, asking who she is. She says that she isn't suspicious at all and hands him her business card. I'm still calling her Scammer. She says that surely he can't tell what she does based on the name of her position. It's just team leader. Since he knows it's a pseudo-religion. Scammer says they conduct various activities for children such as field work and other things like summer camps. Saying that a lot of people are struggling with so many dungeon breaks. And as a result they offer counseling alongside activities. Scammer tells Jay that many people just like him often visit him. He asks what she means and she says that people who work with children often stop by trying to figure out how to help the children better. And she knows that there are many strange places in this world, but she assures there's nothing wrong with her people. And then shows him the branch of where she works. She says they have branches all around the country and receive support funds from the government. He takes her card and looks at June, saying that he knows Hyun told her to go straight home after school. She realizes that she is going to get scolded and Jay tells her to quickly go home, without being sidetracked. And she makes puppy dog eyes while saying goodbye. Jay says he didn't think that she'd let her go. I don't know what this means, but the Scammer girl says that if she could talk to him for a bit, he might want to join them. Jay says he understands that she just thinks he's an easier prey than a 16-year-old girl. She pulls out a tablet saying that this is her association and shows all the sponsor companies they have. Saying that surely he recognizes some of them. He looks over and says that he's honestly not a teacher. He ended up working as one and then thinks about what he should say and asks her if she's heard about Hunter High School. And she realizes that she's caught a good prey and quickly says that she's seen it on the news and starts to praise him, asking if he's a teacher. He says yes and sighs. And he says considering how some students have suffered through their childhood, it's no easy job. She says she understands and he must have gone through a lot and asks if he is a hunter. He says yes, but his rank isn't high. She quickly changes the subject, saying that what's important is his dedication, and then asks if they can go to the coffee shop to talk. They head over there and he starts laying the perfect prey for her. A rookie low-ranking hunter who has only been a teacher for a little over a month. And how his concerns for the students are genuine and that he has a strong connection to Hong, Korea's strongest hunter. So what better prey is there for this cult? It cuts to Jay telling Hong about the National Society of New Minds and Spirit, the pseudo-religion. Hong asks why he is holding this. Jay tells him that some lady gave it to him on the street. He snatched it, as she was cornering Hyun's sister. Hong asks if he means June and he says yes, and if he should keep an eye on her as her guardian. He says that he's closer to a proxy guardian, but Jay quickly changes the conversation, saying that he easily convinced the Scammer by convincing her that he was worried about the students. She gave him a lecture, and told him to attend in his free time. Hong asks if he is trying to get his permission to get in touch with her. Jay says yes, since he talked to her already. He figured maybe somebody else could go this time, and have them say they're a teacher just like him at the school. Hong asks why he doesn't keep doing it. Jay reminds him that he's under probation. Hong says that it'd be a problem to have him disappear without notice. But if he lets them know beforehand, it is okay. Jay says that he is trusting him way too much and is speechless. Hong asks him if there is a problem and Jay says no, he's just not good at this sort of thing. Hong asks what he means. Jay says that he's not good at sneaking around and digging up information. Hong asks why not. Jay says it's because he has no talent for it. Awkward silence befalls the room. Hong does his best to stop his laughter, but lets it out anyway. We see him wiping tears away from his eyes. Jae asks him if he is done laughing. Hong asks what kind of tasks Jae did at ARC. Jae says that he did all sorts of chores, and Hong asks if he ever infiltrated somewhere to gather information. Jae says that was not his job. Hong says that ARC had no clue and puts his hand on Jae's shoulder, saying not to worry. He forgot the name of the place already, Jae tells him. He says whatever, telling Jae to go see what they are about. Jae says he already told him that he can't, and Hong says not to worry, seeing as how he has the kids in the palm of his hand. He should be fine and smiles, saying he's more than capable, but wonders if he'll be okay, saying if he comes into close contact with some people from ARC they might recognize him. Jae says that this is a good reason for him not to go, and Hong smiles, saying surely he has a plan for that. He continues laughing, saying that surely he has somewhere to run and hide if it happens. Jae starts to cook up a weird excuse, saying that he wore a mask when he was in ARC, so not many people know his face in the first place. Hong says there's nothing to worry about, then tells him not to overdo it, just get a feel for it and then leave, and not to take any unnecessary risk. Hong tells him to also get a phone while he's out, asking how he doesn't have a phone at this day and age, saying he must have no social life. Jae tells him he's busy preparing a curriculum, and Hong asks what he means. Jae asks how he plans to teach the kids without a lesson plan. At the very least teach them about the protocols of a raid. Hong nervously sweats, saying that he's not great at explaining things. Jae continues to straight flame Hong indirectly, and Hong says my bad, bro, and then he hauls straight cheeks to the door. Jae says he's not ready yet, and keeps berating him, saying that the principal can't run away. It jumps to the day of the dungeon raid practice. We hear Kaemin asking Jae when he plans to get in touch, and he says after the raid. She says he seems way too relaxed about this, as he is barely even wearing armor. Then tells him to be honest, asking what his rank is, saying if he's an illegal awakener, he must have an idea. He tells her that she's seen his license and he has a D rank. She gets annoyed, saying to tell the truth, and then sighs. She says that's the only way ARC wouldn't be suspicious, and that Misin went through a lot of trouble fabricating his background. Jae asks what kind of person she is to be able to create a whole life for somebody in just a few days. Kaemin says she also asked her once and she was curious, and Misin told her that it was better that she did not know. Jae gets a bit worried. Kaemin messes around with his anklet, asking if he thinks the kids will be okay, and he says that the Daeseon Guild filtered the dungeon beforehand, so if they can't raid this they should quit being hunters. She says that he didn't even make them pick a leader, and he sighs, asking why he would make them pick a leader when only one of them have been into a dungeon before. She says that some of them are still from the guilds. She says that both Han and Yun Wook are not clueless about raids. Jae completely forgot about Yun Wook. She reminds him that he is from a guild. Jae acts like this is new information, saying that he didn't know that the fat pig was a guild slave. He laughs, saying despite being a victim himself, he acted like an ass toward every other normal guild member. She takes his anklet off, saying he's all set, and he thanks her. She cheerfully tells him she'll leave the students in his care. He leaves her on read, and then heads outside. The students turn, and he says that this time he's gonna make sure that Yun Wook doesn't turn into a pig, but rather he'll make him a human instead of an animal. It jumps to a woman introducing herself to Jae, saying that her name is Kim So-jong and that she is affiliated with the Dungeon Management Office of the Ministry of the Interior and Safety of South Korea. He stutters for a second and then introduces himself to her. She asks if he has prepared the raid documents. He says that he has, and pulls out the raid report as well as the students' licenses. He looks at her, saying that she looks familiar and that he definitely must have seen her somewhere before. She notices that he's staring at her, asking if something is wrong. He says that there isn't, and he's just nervous about the raid. She says that Hong has been boasting about his students' skills. Jae says that doesn't mean they can let their guard down, and she agrees. Hong then starts barking at her, saying, why does she always yell at him but is so friendly towards Jae? She says that she wouldn't have to shout at him if he did things right. He then instantly recognizes her, saying that she was the auditor present on the day he attacked the research lab. He never thought he'd see her again like this, and she went through her fair share of hardships during her time, but it still worked out without trouble. He says that she is his role model, as he wanted to live the same life she did. She says that usually hunters are dispatched to take care of such situations, but they don't have many available hunters nowadays. Hong asks if there's really a need to call on other hunters when he is present, and she tells him that's just how the procedure is. They continue arguing with one another, while we see the students inside the van, all hella nervous, and Jae says they're going to burst into tears soon. He says they're going to enter the dungeon now, and Sojong apologizes, saying that he should feel free to begin. He then starts logging on the voice recorder, saying that it's June 15, 2024, and 9 members are entering. It is the Hunter Training Model School, and he states his name along with every one of the students' names. We finally learn that that girl's name is Yoon Young, and they enter the dungeon. Now all the students look around, amazed at the landscape, and Jae tells them to pay attention, saying, as he mentioned before, he will not be providing any assistance. He'll be grading them based on how much they contribute during the raid as well. Sung Jian then calls out to him, saying he's been meaning to ask this question and wonders how the results of this test will affect him. Jae says that starting with the lowest score, they will have a personal meeting with the principal and remedial classes with him afterward. The lower you score, the longer you will see him for. Sung Jian and Jinwoo do not want that. Jae then says that's enough chatting and that he'll leave them be, so they're on their own from now on. He walks away as they watch him leave behind some trees. Yoon Young then wonders what to do now. They start to recall the position the healer should be in, saying they should be in the center. As they start to talk, Yoon Wook speaks up, saying according to the exploration information, the dungeon's core is located on the east side of the forest, and to reach the core, they have to pass the pixies first, asking if they remember their characteristics. They say yes, and he asks about the mana hiding runes. Jinwoo and Sion both show that they have them, and Yoon Wook starts to act like the leader, saying it's time to get going. Jae watches, saying it's a little frustrating to stand by and watch. This is a forest dungeon with so many trees around that even pixies who possess intelligence equivalent to a child would bring water to extinguish the fire, but there are no water sources in this dungeon. So they can just light the forest on fire and get away with it. If they were to catch on to this detail, they would all get it 100%, but of course nobody will. We see a pixie screaming, and it jumps toward Han, who hits it away. Yoon Wook says that they've closed in on them as the pixies start to swarm, and he calls for the mages, telling them to put up a shield. Jinwoo panics, but Sion doesn't, as she begins instantly chanting, putting up a barrier in front of Yoon Wook, who says to finish them. Han then starts to run in from behind, instantly killing the 2 pixies, and is gassed out now that the battle is over. Yoon Wook tells them all to double check to see if the monsters are all dead, saying that was their 3rd battle, and he asks how everybody's rune papers are. Sion says they've already checked, and there are no problems, and they'll soon reach the core. Yoon Wook asks if everybody is ready, saying according to the exploration report, there are some rare cases where the location of the core of the dungeon changes, so they can't let their guard down until the end. As the students begin heading over, they all say that this is quite easier than an average C-rank dungeon. Hyun asks Sion about the dungeon she was in before, and she says that she went in with her grandfather, but she's only gone into A-rank dungeons. Soon Jin says that she's followed her master into a C-rank dungeon for training purposes, but due to it being only for training, it was easier than an average C-rank dungeon, but this place is a lot easier than that one. Sung Jian gets excited, saying it's just an indicator of their skills, and Jae can't believe he's saying that with such confidence. Yoon Wook says that of course it would be easy because they have somebody protecting them, and the principal would never have allowed them in this dungeon if it was impossible for them to clear. Jae just can't believe that he has not once been referred to as his teacher. Yoon Wook continues, saying when they were entering, he also mentioned that he had already checked in the nearby dungeons, and from what he can tell, he already cleared them to make it safer. Jae says that he's reluctant, but because of his observation, Yoon Wook gets one more point, and Yoon Wook continues leading the group, saying considering pixies always move in packs, yet the most they've encountered was around 8 at once, his warning that he would not intervene unless a dangerous situation occurred or whatever was just a bluff to make them nervous, and that he's probably hiding behind a tree annoyed about being seen through. That is exactly what is happening. So Jae says even if this is the easiest dungeon of the lot, it isn't hard to raise the difficulty, and he'll teach them a lesson here for getting too complacent. Jae explains that most of the world's tragedies begin from dungeon breaks, as we see a young Yoon Wook standing in a road. Someone calls out to him, asking if he's okay, and if by chance he had awakened. The man asks what his name is, and Yoon Wook tells him. The man greets him, saying that he runs a guild, asking if he would like to give it a visit. It would be a waste not to use the ability he's awakened, as he has to learn how to fully utilize his body, and that he won't charge him a training fee either. As we see, it's a little bit later, and he says instead he just needs to go for a few runs under his guild, and if he succeeds as a hunter in the future, he can pay him back. Yoon Wook looks up at the man, saying it didn't take long for him to understand the meaning behind those gazes, and for everything to become hell. We get a flashback to him in class, and he stands up, saying he heard about Jae being swept up by the monsters while saving Sung Jian, and he should at least say his thanks, and he begins to walk over. Jae turns, noticing him, and says that he reckons this lecture of runes must be too tedious for him. Yoon-wook says that gaze is giving him PTSD, as it was like he was looking at an inanimate object and appraising a slab of butchered meat, and he was instinctively repulsed by it. The flashback ends with the pixies dying, and Hyun says that the number of pixies has decreased. Yoon-wook says that is because they are getting closer to the core, and they should get this done quickly and get out. Even though this dungeon may not be difficult, they never know what excuse that person might make to deduct points. Yoon-young says that definitely sounds like something he would do, and she asks if they saw how he laughed at her while making her roll in the mud, and she really wanted to punch him. Yoon-young says that she once asked the principal whether it would be possible for him to tone down the training. Yoon-wook says that given the principal's personality, he doubts Hong would listen. Yoon-young says that there isn't even a place to shower, so this is too much. He asks if she said that to Hong, and she says yes, and Yoon-wook says that he probably told her that she isn't going inside a dungeon to live luxuriously. She says that is exactly what he said. Yoon-wook continues, saying that he also probably told her that she will be seeing worse things when she becomes a hunter, so she shouldn't make a fuss about having some dust on her clothes. Yoon-young begins to get flustered, saying that is exactly what he said, and she is frustrated. Seon tells her to wait, and Yoon-young asks what it is, and Seon asks if they hear something. It is a bunch of pixies screeching, and they instantly start to get swarmed by a whole horde of them. Yoon-wook manages to block a couple of hits for Yoon-young, and then notices one going for Hyun, and he yells, knocking a pixie away with his fist, saying they need to protect her. He wonders what is happening so suddenly, and why there are so many of them, debating if they should get out. He begins to think about the man he met when he was younger, saying that he would have made someone a sacrificial lamb and continued the raid. He starts to realize that the sacrificial lamb could be none other than Hyun. It usually isn't the case in other dungeons, but healers are useless in this one. Their inferior physical abilities just cause them to be a burden. He then starts to hate that he is thinking about this, saying not long ago, he was the one being used as a sacrifice for the monsters, wondering why the thought would even cross his mind. He hears someone calling out to him, as we see him losing his vision. As the pixies are contaminating his thoughts, the pixie gets cut in half in front of him, and his eyes instantly open wide. Jae asks him why he is spacing out in the middle of a raid, and that he needs to get his shit together. Yoon-wook then starts to shake and fall over a little bit, and Jae is confused, and he watches as the rest of them are getting harassed by the pixies. He tells Jinwoo to put his shield up, and Sung Jian needs to focus on the northwest. Yoon-young needs to stick to Hyun, Han needs to watch the southwest, and Seon needs to use a barrier as well. He gives a countdown, telling them all to do it now, and they instantly do that, as we see a barrier get applied blocking the pixies, and Jae says that they need to reposition themselves. He didn't even do much, all he did was light the rear of the forest on fire, which chased the pixies out in a single direction. He didn't do it out of anger at the kids, it was an official method from the training manual, and he wouldn't have done it if he thought the kids wouldn't be able to handle it. Even now, they're fighting well once they've locked in. They don't have to face all the monsters, all they have to do is hold out until the pixies pass and then destroy the dungeon core and escape. The reason they fell apart must have been because of Yoon-wook. Ever since they entered the dungeon, he had been giving orders naturally, and the kids had been following him. Even during regular training, he always acted as the leader. No matter how much a leader's ability can affect whether a raid is successful, relying on the leader for everything is not right. Therefore, he already knows how he'll grade them. Later in the van, he tells Hong and Kaemin that the dungeon raid failed. Hong is confused, saying that the dungeon disappeared, and Sojong confirmed that the raid succeeded, asking what he's talking about. Jae says he'll tell them the details later, and when they make it back, all the students start to leave, and he says he'll tell them the final grades tomorrow, and he doesn't even know if that matters at this point. He tells them all that they are dismissed. All the students leave but Yoon-wook, and Hong and Kaemin sit there awkwardly. Jae asks why he's not leaving and then sighs, asking if both Kaemin and Hong can get out so he can talk to him. As they leave, he tells Yoon-wook to speak his mind. Yoon-wook doesn't say anything at first. Jae says he's not trying to lecture him, and if he has a problem, he should fix it for his own good. Yoon-wook finally speaks up, saying that he shouldn't be allowed to become a hunter, as his voice is shaky and we see him full of tears. We get a flashback to Hong's apartment, and Yoon-wook is standing there, wondering what's going on, saying that he ran here because Hong said it was urgent, and he looks at Jae. Hong says that Yun Wook is the only person that he can leave him to. Yun Wook asks who this kid is, and Hong says it's his son. Yun Wook asks if he kidnapped him, and Hong says not at all, he's been his son for a few years, and he'll be back as soon as possible after finishing the raid, and in the meantime, he hopes that Yun Wook can take good care of him. Yun Wook stands there confused, and Hong continues, saying that June is also in a dungeon, and Hunter Lee is abroad, so it's been very difficult. But then he thought about Yun Wook and heard he cleared an A-rank dungeon recently and, considering his personality, thought he'd rest for at least a whole week. Yun Wook says he's right but tries to say that he doesn't want to do this, and Hong tells him that he'll find his credit card on the table if he wants to buy anything. Yun Wook says he never agreed to do this, asking if he thinks he'll just go along with it. Hong nods his head, saying it seems that way, and then leaves, telling him to take care of his little boy. They stand there awkwardly. Yun Wook looks down at Jae, wondering what to say, and introduces himself as Hong's student, asking Jae what his name is. We get some more backstory, and we learn that the guild Yun Wook found, 2 years after graduating from the academy, was called Memorial, and it became the talk of the town in just 1 year. Bro also got wide, and as much as Jae hates to admit it, he is a remarkable man. A bit later when he's older, we see Yun Wook vomiting in a corner. Yun Wook then turns around after vomiting, asking Jae what his name is again since he is now part of the management agency. And then looks at his face, saying he swears he's seen him somewhere before. Jae says he's pleased to meet him for the first time and introduces himself. Yun Wook says he's sure he's heard that name before, and Jae says they're already significantly behind schedule, so they should hurry. Yun Wook says there's no need to be so hasty, pulling something out of his robe, and he says that he'll take care of it and leave it to him, and he starts chugging it. Jae's surprised, asking him if that's alcohol and if he's gone mad since they've entered the gate. Yun Wook doesn't even defend himself and just asks if he wants a drink. Jae says no. Yun Wook says it's because his brain doesn't function well unless he drinks this, and he always has to drink before a raid. He begins to walk away, saying that they should get this over with and drink more later. Jae says if he has to work with this pig again, he is going to punch the director and quit his job. All of the flashbacks end, and we see Yun Wook crying. Jae wishes he would stop. He goes to call out to him, but Yun Wook continues, saying that he shouldn't be allowed to be a hunter. All Jae can see is a crying pig. Jae hands him some water, telling him to drink and calm down, and Yun Wook thanks him. Jae says, of course, being gentle-hearted might mean one cries often, but what he really can't stand are those who think crying is all it takes without even realizing their mistakes. If he was a staff member of the management agency, he'd be giving him one hell of a scolding. There's only one reason he's going easy on him right now, and that is because he needs to nurture him to be a proper human being. He asks him why he thinks he shouldn't be a hunter. Yun Wook goes to say that he's sure he's heard that he's from a group, but Jae cuts him off saying he knows about his guild. Yun Wook says that when you put it that way, it sounds professional and all, but he lived as bait for 3 years, being treated like a meat shield. Jae says he can imagine what he went through, a typical mundane and tiresome story of being tricked into a fraudulent contract at a young age, but it's still something that no child in their early teens ever should go through. Yun Wook says he vowed to become a proper hunter and gather people like him to form a guild to help people and to prevent such things from happening again. But when the pixies attacked him in the dungeon, he had a thought, and that thought was it would be much easier if he used those who weren't helpful in combat as bait. He thought that he hated that guild master more than anyone else, but it turned out that this was the most familiar method to him. And he grits his teeth, saying he finds it loathsome. Jae says there's actually somebody he knows that grew up in a similar situation to him, and he says that he needs to use a different approach from what he did for Sion because he can tell that this is the same pig he knows of from back then. He says that, like Yun Wook, he once signed a contract not knowing any better at a young age. He eventually escaped with the help of a kind passerby. And that person also wanted to help others in a similar situation, and now that he thinks about it, he thinks that they are very similar, and he faced the same struggles as Yun Wook because that's who he's talking about. With what Yun Wook just confided in him about his pig-like behavior, he now understands him a bit better. In the end, he can never escape the memories of his past, such as his old guild, the disaster of his school, and all the other memories. And he wishes June gave him a little bit of a heads up because now he feels bad for the guy. Jae says that he honestly found it amusing seeing the guy who used to crawl around drunk, donating faithfully every year, the fact that he compensated the victim's family generously on behalf of the guild, and even took on the role of ambassador for a campaign to eradicate illegal activities in dungeons. The incident where he got stabbed in the past was actually because he had been covering for those who were embezzling guild funds. Jae continues, saying that regardless of all of his hardships, he kept going. Yoon-wook asks, with what? Jae says that he continued to help those who went through hardships like him, and he once asked him why he continued. We get a flashback to Jae saying that he's sure there are others who take care of them, and he's sure Yoon-wook is aware that he won't be rewarded for it. Yoon-wook says that he's sure he knows this is a rude question. It's amusing how his father asked the same question too. Jae is surprised, and Yoon-wook continues, saying that regardless of all that, he can't believe it was keeping him up all night. Jae says he never said that. Yoon-wook continues, saying that he's so curious that his insides feel as if they're twisted. Jae also never said that. Yoon-wook says that he has no choice but to answer. He's not a moral person, and to be honest, he can do worse things if he really wanted to pursue efficiency. Jae asks, then why not? And Yoon-wook says it's because he doesn't want to fall to the same level, and he must prove that he is better than that. The flashback ends, and he tells Yoon-wook that he needs to prove the same as well. It's his life, so he has to make his own choice. And he asks Yoon-wook if he knows anything about his previous guildmaster going to jail. Yoon-wook starts to get angry. And Jae says he's sure that must be frustrating, so he should show him that he can succeed without resorting to the same methods he tried on him. It jumps to later, as Jae explained to Hong and came in about what happened. Hong asks if he knows how surprised he was when he deemed the rate a failure, and if they can't clear a weakened dungeon, then they can't be hunters. Jae says that they should at least receive some counseling. Hong asks if he means Yoon-wook. Jae says not just Yoon-wook, but he also heard about Han working as bait as well. And the students that were isolated during the dungeon break incident must have experienced a tremendous amount of stress, and having them undergo psychological counseling at least once seems like a great idea in his book. Hong says he wants to be straight with him. Of course, they are good options, but what are the odds of a psychiatrist being an awakened? And it's not entirely impossible, but that needs to be the case, as when a hunter goes on a rampage while being counseled, what are the odds of an awakened psychiatrist being able to subdue the hunter? Jae is confused about why this matters, and Kaemin says a few years ago, there was an incident where a doctor was killed by a hunter who had a panic attack while being counseled. Hong says of course the hunter didn't do it intentionally, but the problem arose in the aftermath, as it brought the world into an uproar. Jae asks if the doctors refused to provide treatment, and Kaemin says rather than that, they wanted measures in place to guarantee their safety. For instance, by wearing a mana control unit like Jae is currently. Jae says the others must have refused it. She says nowadays, counseling can only be provided through a phone call. The patient can't even see the counselor's face because there have been incidents where the hunter was visited by the doctor. Jae now understands that all the counseling he received when he was a kid was only possible because it was before he had awakened, and he really wishes the kids could have something similar. Hong says there's no way proper treatment can be provided like that, so naturally, the hunters stop seeking counseling. Jae tries to justify it, saying that they're kids, but Hong says they all have licenses, and they're all above a D rank, and they can't expect any help from experts. Hong sighs, saying if it were truly such a big shock, Yoon-wook wouldn't have followed him to begin with, so he doesn't need to worry about Yoon-wook too much. Jae says but still, in the end, they are children. Hong says it's not like he doesn't understand his concerns for the children. Then he says he remembers that mind thing from Arc. Jae tells him the proper name, saying it's about time he memorized it. Hong says he recalls Jae saying that they tried to lure him into joining them with child psychology. Jae starts to get a bad feeling as Hong says since he's going anyway, he needs to try to pay attention in the lecture, and maybe he'll get something out of it. And the kids have grown familiar with him, so they can also give him the position of a teacher counselor. Jae says he doesn't think that should be the case, even if they are short-staffed at the school. Hong says considering how well he handled Yoon-wook, he thinks he fits. Jae goes to talk about a raise, but Hong instantly asks the waiter for more beer and starts to wave, asking for it, completely ignoring Jae. The scene jumps to the next day, as Jae is leaving a phone store, and he thinks about Hong's words, saying once the hunters have crossed into a gate, they're isolated from the civilization outside, meaning only the strongest hunters will survive. And the kids will graduate in just a few years, and after that, they have to solve their problems without any help from Hong. Therefore, he can't deny the necessity of going through the process of struggling and overcoming that struggle alone, so they'll be able to leave the nest and fly with their own wings. But there are limits. He never expected Hong to be caring, and he's even thinking more about the children than he expected. He starts to look at the news about Hong. He says most of them are irrelevant. He has a thought, and decides to call that scam number, and the scam lady picks it up, introducing herself. Jay says it's been a while. She said that she knew he'd call, saying where else can she possibly find a teacher more caring than him? And he's annoyed since she only saw him once before. She tells him that there's a meeting for children with dungeon break trauma, taking place in Suwon, asking if he can spare the time to attend. He sticks his phone away while she's yapping and just waits for her to end, saying he's not sure if this is the right choice. It jumps to them in a car, and we hear Kamen asking him if he's okay with such an underwhelming entrance. He asks what she's saying, and she says that they should have brought Amy to lift their spirits. He asks who the hell Amy is, and she says it's her car. He asks what good gathering attention will do. And she says that he was the one using his relationship with Mr. Hong, and it'd be better if he let it be known that he's close with the Archmage, Kamen. Jay says no thanks, and the principal suffices. She asks what's with that ungrateful attitude since she drove him here. Then Kamen tells him good luck. Jay enters the building, and somebody holding a clipboard asks if he's here for the lecture. Jay says it's quite a familiar face. The man asks for his name. Jay tells him his name, and the guy looks at the listing and says that it seems like team leader Jong has invited him, and he can head straight to the small auditorium on the second floor, and he needs to stick this on the back of his phone and show it upon entrance. Jay's surprised, and the guy asks what's wrong. Jay says it's nothing, he just looks like someone he knows, and that's all. Jay then says it's not only that he looks like him, but he is the same person, and he was wondering what number 3 was doing after graduating from the lab as a failure, and now he knows he is here. We learn that number 3 was 15 years old and the oldest child in the laboratory. Since graduation and disposal were decided around the age of 13, number 3 was practically an adult to the younger children. He remained even after that period because he was a good child who managed the younger children well under the director's instructions. Or perhaps it was because the director disliked Jay and didn't want him to be the one managing the children. Regardless, it didn't stop him from getting the kids to harass everyone. And it became even easier after number 3 disappeared just before turning 16. This was an unfortunate turn of events for the director. With number 3, who used to keep him in check, gone, there was nothing holding him back. Even though they weren't on good terms, he had grown somewhat attached, so he remembered bitterly about it. He never thought he'd meet him again like this. In the auditorium, one of the scammers starts their little speech, saying how every child has a different personality and is in a different situation. She asks the crowd what's the most important thing when it comes to talking to children, and they all yell, love and patience. She says that's correct. They should split up into 2 groups and have a discussion. Jay is surprised that it's actually kind of helpful. He wonders if it's because people would be weirded out if they blabber strange things from the start. One of the girls in the audience calls out to another, saying she's noticed she was absent last time, and the girl says she's been too busy with work and couldn't find time to attend. Jay starts to wonder if these people could already be affiliated with ARC, or if this is the method they are using to increase their believers. The girl keeps yapping and then spots Jay beside her, asking if this is his first time. He says yes, and she apologizes for only talking among themselves, saying that he should jump in too. He says that just listening is good enough for him. Turns out they are all teachers. One of the girls in the front asks Jay what school he works at. He says it's a high school, and they start to say how high school students are very sensitive, and this yapping goes on forever and ever until he gets up, saying he needs to go to the bathroom. As soon as he heads out, he wonders how he can extract helpful information at this rate, saying he can't even confirm if they're truly affiliated with ARC. He decides to go talk with some of the children working here. Why does he need to when he saw number 3, who he is certain is affiliated with ARC? Besides, if the ARC has targeted him as their prey, they'll come first without him needing anything. On Q3, rolls up, calling out to him, asking if he can help, and Jay says, as expected. 3 then asks if he dislikes the lecture, and Jay says it seems like he doesn't recognize him and he feels kind of sad since they spent so much time together in the laboratory. It makes sense though, if he knew that the adult version of a little shit traveled across time, he might as well immediately go to ARC himself and beg for his life. He asks 3 if he's a volunteer here, and he says yes, and he's here to get his hours in, although that's not the entire reason. Jay asks why, and he starts to get really nervous, saying that he suffered because of the dungeon breaks, so he just takes coming to help the children who experience the same things as him. Jay says that's kind, but now he understands what he's going with, and he says he's also in charge of students with similar experiences to him. 3 is surprised, and Jay says they all seemed fine on the outside, but it turns out they weren't on the inside. 3 stands there for a moment, and there is awkward silence before Jay apologizes, saying he said that without thinking. 3 says he shouldn't be, and he likes talking about this topic. At first, he hated even thinking about it, but now he likes it because he can help by helping other people with the same experiences. Jay's watch beeps, and he says he shouldn't be too impatient and he should go back in. He thinks it must have been tough for him to talk to him about this, and he thanks him. 3 says no, and he goes to say something, but Jay cuts him off, saying he's sure, and he writes his number down on a piece of paper and rips it out, giving it to 3, saying if he needs something, he can contact him. He's not a big shot, but he's still a hunter. 3 is surprised, and Jay smiles, saying that he can't believe he's being the perfect prey, and surely they'll take this opportunity to try to get him in. It jumps to later with Hong, and Jay explains how number 3 was there and they don't give names, just numbers. Hong asks about his younger sibling's number, and Jay says he was number 12, and Hong gets hella angry, saying they are worse than animals, giving the same expression he gave when he beat up the guys in the laboratory. Jay says he should try to investigate orphanages, and he heard they have a child sponsorship project because they removed the children hastily. They left some traces in the training centers, and if they sent them to various different orphanages, it would be easier to avoid attention. Hong says he's got a point, and he'll let Hunter Lee know about this. Then he says that he and Miss Kim have a dungeon to clear in 2 days, as it was an urgent one that just appeared. In that time, Jay needs to take care of the students. Jay asks for how long, and Hong says if the dungeon was an A rank, he could have guaranteed it to take a week, but this one he has no idea about. He shouldn't worry, as Missin's guild will help. Jay wonders if there was an S-rank dungeon that he cleared around this time. Hong also tells him that Hunter Lee mentioned they cannot further delay repairing the school facilities. Jay asks if that means they're going to construct a new building for everybody, and Hong says that'll be next year. Jay then asks about the mana control unit, saying he didn't put it back on after the raid. Hong asks if he wants to use it again, and Jay says no. Hong says he doesn't have to then, and it's easier for him to teach the students without it, asking if he's wrong. Jay looks to the side mischievously, saying sure, and then asks if he can proceed with the lectures following the curriculum. Hong asks what curriculum, and Jay starts to give him a death glare, saying he gave it to him, and he told him to take a good look. Hong clears his throat, saying he totally remembers reading it now, and Jay says he doesn't need to lie. Hong clears his throat again. I like the banter, and just like that, Hong leaves, telling the students to make sure they listen to Jay while they're gone. We see him in class, and Sung Jian asks about their scores. Jay says, honestly, he was so ready to criticize and tear them apart, but came and told him that it's about time he gives them a carrot. And she's sure the students already know what they did wrong, so there's really no need for him to scold them. Instead of discouraging them, he needs to encourage them to do better next time. He reminds her there is no next time when it comes to raids. She gives him a love tap, saying he doesn't need to say that. And to make sure to wear the clothes that she gifted him this time too, and he shouldn't be wearing casual sportswear to work. Jay then asks them what they think the most important thing is to prepare for when they do a dungeon raid. Any answer is fine, and they can repeat answers too. Yun Wook says supplies. Yun Young says combatants. Hyun says information. And Jin Woo says he's going to say supplies as well. A car pulls up, and Jay tells them all their answers are technically correct, but all of them are important. But he asks them who is the one who reviews the dungeon information to pick a strategy and decide on the team, and who determines the necessary supplies. And they all say the captain. Jay explains that there were 2 major reasons for their failure to clear the dungeon. Firstly, not appointing a captain with the authority to fully command others within the dungeon. And we see Missin open the door. Jay continues saying that secondly, they relied too heavily on Yun Wook. No matter how easy a dungeon may seem, always appoint a captain and a vice captain. This way, the other can take over in case one is neutralized. In reality, that was a dungeon they all should never have failed at their level. He starts to recall Kaimin's words, and he says it became easier after he reorganized their formation. And if they had kept their mind clear, even that wouldn't have been necessary. He then goes to conclude it but remembers Kaimin's words once more and says that dungeon raids aren't just about fighting well. From now on, he'll teach them how to use their brains as well. They should think of how they would approach the raid if they were appointed as the captain. Then he tells them they need to take a short break and gather in the mage classroom. Also, Missin has brought some snacks if they would like some. He walks over to her, and she says it's been a while, and he talks about the dungeon that Hong entered. She asks what about it, and he asks if the dungeons will have sirens in it. She asks where he heard that from. He asks if it's really true, and she sighs, saying it is. It's a siren dungeon located on the coast of Sokcho, and it has already devoured many hunters. Jay knows it because it is also known as the Siren's Nest. It was a dungeon break in 2027 that had came in as the support personnel. Their goal was to rescue hunters and civilians ensnared by the Siren's abilities, and the only casualty was Cayman herself. We see a hunter sneak up behind one of the Sirens, and he gets cocky, saying he doesn't get what people are having a hard time against a monster who can only sing. As soon as she turns around, his mind goes blank. We learn that the Siren charmed the weak-minded hunters, and because moving would break her unique magic, Cayman let herself be attacked even though she knew it was coming. After the establishment of the Ability Management Agency, Hong's first task as the director was to clean up the aftermath of the Siren's Nest. As we see Cayman's corpse on the ground with a blade in her chest, Misson realizes that he's lost in thought, and Jay says even though he knows that Cayman's death is in the distant future, nobody can expect his emotions to be purely rational. Originally, they shouldn't be exploring the Siren dungeon, and he feels very uneasy about it. But with Hong by Cayman's side, things likely aren't likely to go wrong. He sighs and tells her that it's nothing, and she says okay then, and then snaps her fingers, asking him if he would like to join her guild. And she says trying to avoid attention is pointless, once they publicly announce the runes, and she plans to announce the runes with the least impact first. If that goes well, she will reveal the mana hiding rune. Having him in her guild would make it easier to control the information. If things go south, they can just handle it under the guild's name. He says he understands, but he has no intention of joining a guild. She asks even if it's only a name alone, and he says he has to decline. She takes it like a champ and just says okay then, and doesn't let it bother her. He's surprised, and he thought she'd push more. She asks if that's what he wanted, and he says no. She then smiles, saying that he saved their youngest, so she thought she should do something for him. Unless he suddenly murders a passerby for some reason, she can cover for him. It jumps to the Siren's dungeon, as we see Hong and everybody else walking forward. Hong's got some drip. As we see his earplugs and his ears for the Sirens, for some reason, it focuses on his dog tags. This might be a flag. Jay asks if they've all thought about it during their break, saying there are no right answers in the raids, and they should think quickly to devise a strategy. Jay asks them who would like to go first, but nobody speaks up. He says that since Yun Wook is the captain, he would like to ask who he would appoint as vice captain. He says Han since they've teamed up before and he has some dungeon experience. Jay says they'll consider the white pieces the raid members and the black pieces the monsters as he shows them a chessboard. He says hypothetically they've entered the dungeon, and according to the exploration information, the core is located in the east of the forest. He asks Yun Wook what he will do. Yun Wook says that he'll proceed in the direction of the core, and after entering, they'll use the runes prepared by their mages and start their formation. He says that Hyun will be at the center with the mages on both sides of her. He'll stand in front, and Han will stand in the rear. Jay says, 15 minutes after entering, he encountered a single pixie. Yun Wook says they'll kill it, and Jay asks why. Yun Wook explains that pixies are monsters that usually move in groups, but some may patrol individually or in pairs within the territory, and he chooses to kill it quickly before it can return and bring more. Jay states that the distance between him and the pixie is around 15 meters, with 3 trees between the two obstructing the pixie's view. Thus, the pixie has yet to realize that it has been spotted. Yun Wook says if the pixie isn't retreating, then they'll move closer until they have a clear view of it, and he'll inform the rest about the pixie via hand signals and ready the mages. Once they are close enough with a clear view, they will attack and kill the pixie. Jay says now he's gotten closer to the core, but a huge group of rampaging pixies is going to attack his group. Yun Wook thinks about how this happened before and he says first of all, they will focus on getting their formation correct to ensure that they do not get swept away by the pixies. Soon Janand himself will deal with the pixies in the front, since they don't know the reason behind the pixies' attacks, their goal is to endure. They'll kill the ones in the front and let the other pixies go. Jay tells them the pixies have passed, asking what they will do next. Yun Wook says they will destroy the dungeon core before anything else happens. Since their goal is to clear the dungeon, there isn't a need to find out the reason behind the actions. Jay looks down at the chessboard, and Yun Wook looks at him, wondering what he will say. Then Jay smiles, saying good, and that the raid is complete. Yun Wook sighs in relief. Yun Wook then asks what the score was, and Jay says that dungeon raids don't have scores. Yun Wook asks what the point was then. Jay says it was to determine whether the raiders would live or die. Now he would like everybody to take a turn before the class ends. If Yun Wook appointed Han as vice captain, he would love to give it a try. Now that Han is the captain of this group, he asks if he would like to appoint him as vice captain. He says that he will pick Yun-wook. Jae asks why. Han says that Yun-wook was more skilled and experienced than he is. They continue, and Jae says that now they have entered the dungeon, he has encountered 6 pixies right at the gate. Han is surprised and says that such a thing didn't happen at the dungeon they raided. Jae says that he never said this was meant to be a copy of the dungeon they raided, as no 2 dungeons are ever the same. They need to remember how he told them he is going to teach them to use their brains, and there is no easier way to learn it than this. Back at the Siren dungeon, we see it flapping its wings. It looks more like a harpy to me. It's causing the water in the ocean to swirl, and some of it hits Hong. He says as expected, it would have been quite a struggle without Kamin. The siren goes to sing a song, and Hong says that many hunters underestimate the dungeon because the monsters hear a siren. Despite the fact that no survivors made it out of this dungeon for 3 years, the sirens have been devouring hunters endlessly. Kamin looks over at one of the raid members who gives her a thumbs up, and Hong stops one of the sirens, and he wonders if there is a rune that can block out the voices of only the sirens. He says that first his goal was to surveil Jae, but he has helped make things more convenient. He says that it has almost been a full year since he last went on a raid and he can no longer ignore the pressure from the government at this point. In such a circumstance, a skilled hunter devoted to teaching students and willing to design an entire semester's curriculum appeared out of nowhere. Once the whole arc incident is resolved, he'd like to take some time to nurture him too, as he is the perfect age for his talent to bloom. While he's thinking about it, one of the sirens tries to grab his polearm and he says oops and pulls it away, thrusting it forward. He then pushes off the ground with his foot, leaping into the air above the siren, stabbing it straight through the chest. The siren screams, but of course, can't hear it due to the earplugs. Another siren from afar watches and gets angry, leaping off her little rock and flies straight towards Kamin, who is standing still. As it gets closer and closer to Kamin, she starts to turn around, and we see Hong actually tank the attack with his body. And Kamin screams out to him. For some reason, it says miss. Translators had a stroke. It jumps to the next day, as Jae says until now they've been taking turns, so he wants to do it differently today. He wants everybody to listen to the situation, and anyone can suggest strategies. If they think of a suitable strategy upon hearing the situation, they should speak up. As this is a dungeon that is about to break, the top priority is to clear it as fast as possible. The monsters that appear in the dungeon are pixies. Yun-wook is annoyed that they are pixies again. Jae explains that right after they pass through the gate, they'll see plains, and there's a forest located at least 10 kilometers away. Yun-wook asks if they know where the location of the dungeon's core is, and Jae says no. Unfortunately, the exploration of the dungeon was done poorly, and they see neither the core nor the pixies. Yun-wook asks if there's any nearby cover, and Jae says no. In the instant they arrived at the dungeon, all mobs inside were aware of their locations. Yun-young asks how the weather is. Jae says it's sunny. She then thinks about something, saying they should light this place on fire. As pixies don't usually come out of their territory, they stay wary of intruders. Furthermore, they're smart enough to set up traps and ambushes. Knowing how they operate, they would be the only ones at a loss if they decided to cross the plains. So if they can light the place on fire, the pixies won't be able to escape because of their mobility issues. Jae then asks about the raid team, saying with the fire raging at such a large scale, the raid team won't make it out unscathed. She says they just need to exit the dungeon for a bit and then come back. Jae stares at her, actually surprised. But she can't read his face and wonders if maybe she did something wrong. He then holds a sticker in her hand, sticking it straight on her forehead. She blushes a little and is confused, and he tells her well done. He starts to think about what he should give them if they collect 10. Yun-young is still surprised. He hears a car pulling up and looks out the window to see it. He heads outside since it's Kamin's car and calls out to her. We see that she's teary-eyed, and she asks him if he can go to the hospital with her. He asks if the raid failed. She says they succeeded, and that there was an accident with Hong. Jae starts to feel uneasy, saying that's impossible. He apologizes, saying that he needs to take urgent leave and hopes they can take care of the students for the rest of the day. As they drive to the hospital, he says there's no way Hong would have trouble fighting the sirens, wondering why. She says she would like to tell Jae this in advance and that she opposed this. She starts yelling, saying she told him she was hella against this. She wonders what kind of person Hong is and that she never wants to work with him ever again. She headbutts her steering wheel, she letting Jesus take the wheel. He asks what the hell is so wrong and why they're heading to the hospital. She lets out a long sigh and says that she needs to check the time as they should have started by now and he should check his phone. It will be on the first page of any website he visits. On the news, they say that this dungeon has been fully closed and the details of the raid will be released by the Daseon Guild. There are no fatalities, and the wounded have been moved to the hospital for treatment. For the sake of the recovery of the exhausted raid members, the guild requests that they refrain from interviewing. People start to ask if the rumors about Hong being injured are true. They continue this, saying that he was sent to the hospital. The man leaves the interview saying he does not plan to answer any questions. It jumps to later at the hospital, and both Jae and Kaemin just stand there staring blankly. Hong says that he thought Jae would at least shed a tear when he saw him bleeding heavily from his head. He says it would be more dangerous for the kids to discover the truth because he didn't fake it properly. He recently attacked a few of their branches, so ARC is laying low for now and trying to stay under their radar. Jae says this must be why he wanted to fake his injuries so he could observe their movements. Hong says exactly. Kaemin asks how he's doing so well, saying she saw him actually get hit. He says of course she did, she was VIP to watching his injury. She tells him to stop joking around and answer properly, as she thought they were fake. He says that the blood is from the sirens, although he did take a hit. Jae asks how the greatest hunter in Korea would get hit by such a weak mob, and Kaemin says it's her mistake. On top of being nervous, it's been a while since her last raid, and she didn't even notice the siren approaching because she had her earplugs in. Jae says she must have failed to put up a shield so Hong covered for her, then asks why she was so frustrated on the way over here. She says that it's because he said he needed to deceive the students too, and he only told her when she got to the hospital, and that apparently even Missen agreed, saying it was a great plan. Hong says that he told her he's not hurt at all, asking if she wants to see his stomach or something for proof. She barks at him saying no, and she doesn't want to see his Uncle Belly. He asks when he got uncle status, and she says that he's closer to a grandpa. He clicks his tongue and eventually says okay, and that they can't tell anybody about this, and that it's his last resort so only the two of them can know. He pulls out the dog tag, saying that he picked this up in a dungeon in Mongolia 5 years ago. It is an item that absorbs the damage he receives. Kaemin asks if such an item exists, and Hong says although it can absorb damage infinitely, the total amount is fixed. So when you take damage, your name gets engraved in proportion to the damage you absorbed. Thanks to the sirens, the first consonant has been fully engraved. Jae quickly leaves, saying he has to go to the bathroom, and he explains that even 20 years later, when he was given one of the 2 dog tags, only the first letter of Hong's name had been barely completed. If he had returned this dog tag or if he hadn't taken his leave for his vacation, he would have been able to hold on for a bit longer and survive until he made it to Seoul. These 3 clear letters are the only proof that his director ever existed. They make him feel even guiltier about the death of his father, and he sits there saying damn it over and over while squeezing onto it. If he had known things would have turned out like this, he would have called him father at least once. He wonders why he never told him how he felt because in the end, Hong died never hearing those words. It jumps to some time later as Jae is sitting on his couch, and somebody calls asking for someone named Jong-hoon. Jae tries to say they've got the wrong number, but the person yaps that if he doesn't pay his debt at the end of the month, he's going to kill him. The man starts to curse at him, so Jae curses back, asking if he didn't hear him. The guy gets angry, asking who he thinks he is. Jae then hangs up the phone and looks back at where he was called from. His phone rings again, and he thinks it's another scammer. Kaemin asks if he's not going to answer it. He says it seems like the previous owner of this phone was in debt. Even if he blocks the number, they'll keep calling him with a different one. She tells him he should still answer it, and then she picks it up, saying that the teacher is not available. When the caller introduces himself as Kang Tae-woo, Kaemin is surprised and tells Jae that he will be there shortly. She hangs up, and Jae asks why she did that. She says this was the person she was talking about from ARC, as we learn it's number 3's name. She says he should make Tae-woo come to him first. Jae mentions that it seems like Hong's tactic of faking his injury has worked quite well. They look at the classroom filled with get-well-wish mushroom things and wonder what to do with the students. Jae says that's not for them to decide, as it's Hong's duty. He calls back Tae-woo, asking if he called for him. Tae-woo says yes and that he's sorry for it being so abrupt, but he couldn't think of anybody else. He thinks he's awakened. Jae is surprised and wonders if this happened in the original timeline. Tae-woo says he's scared because everything he touches breaks, and he's even hurt his siblings. Jae doesn't know how, since he remembers him being a huge failure, as he was the only successful outcome from the experiment. But even then, it was only a faulty success. He asks Tae-woo where he is, saying he'll be there soon. Tae-woo says he'll text him his address, and thanks him, saying he had no idea what to do. Jae tells him it's okay, and he should just relax, but in reality, he's getting a little annoyed. Kaemin mentions that it's strange timing for him to have awakened. Jae says he's probably been hiding it and only decided to reveal it now. She looks at how far the address is, saying it's pretty far, and reminds Jae he doesn't have a license. Then he looks over at her and begins to smile, and she realizes he wants a ride from her. She tells him to get one of the hunters from Missin's guild to help, and he insists, as he has to show off his connection by getting a ride from none other than the great archmage. She gets annoyed and suddenly thinks about something, saying she has a really good idea. He asks what it is, and she suggests that the reason Taewoo requested his help is that he's having a difficult time controlling his power, and that they should have him enroll into the school. Jae says absolutely not, as they can't let a person from Ark into their school when they don't know what he would do. He continues, saying that's not even an option, and she must be out of her mind even to consider it. She says it's the most surefire way, and reminds him that Taewoo was with his younger sibling. Jae now says he brought this upon himself. A person who has come this far for their sibling wouldn't be picky about their methods. So the moment the word sibling is mentioned, he lost his right to refuse. He tells her he'll ask Mr. Hong first. He FaceTimes him, and Hong immediately says that since they're past the admission period, Taewoo will be a transfer student. And it finally feels like they have a proper school going. Jae doesn't want to be here anymore. It jumps to later in the classroom, where Jae says he would like their attention, and hopes their assignment on creating a raid guide is going well. He tells them to ensure it's done by the end of the week, as he and Kaemin will be leaving early today. He's not sure they'll even be here tomorrow, but make sure they work hard on what he told them about. Everybody looks really gloomy, and Jae asks what's wrong. Sion starts to shake, asking if it's because of Hong and if his condition is that severe. He says he's actually doing fine, it's because of his personal business, so they don't need to worry at all. Yoon-wook says if it's his personal business, why is he bringing Kaemin along? He tells her it just happened. June then starts to say his name over and over, asking if she can attend every day this week. He tells her to do as she pleases, and she gets excited about it. It jumps to somewhere else as we see a little boy drawing in the sand, writing something out, and he seems really excited. A woman calls out to him, and he instantly sits up and drops a stick, running over. We see that it's Jae, his younger self in this timeline. He then erases his name, leaving no trace, running to the woman. Things are getting hella interesting now. It cuts to Kaemin swerving between some monsters on the street, and we see people bleeding out on the ground. Jae tells them to charge straight in. In the backseat, Taewoo is praying to God, promising to live a good life, take care of his siblings, and wants to live a lot longer. Jae yells at him to stop being so pessimistic. Kaemin then hits a pole, and Taewoo continues, wondering if it's because he wished to become a hunter, something he feels he is not worthy of. Jae yells, telling Kaemin to look in front because there's a giant fire lizard dog. She asks why it's so big, saying they can't beat that. Jae grabs his seatbelt, telling her to bring out the rose vines and kicks out the windshield. She says this is the best she can do for now, and he says it's good enough. He wonders how it ended up like this. We get a flashback to 2 hours ago as they were at an agency to register Taewoo as awakened. Jae asks if it's still difficult to control, and Taewoo says yes, but it's better than the first time. Jae says usually, your body gets used to it after a day. But of course, this is when accidents happen the most, so being careful wouldn't hurt. He recalls that Taewoo has younger siblings. Taewoo gets excited, saying yes, saying there are a lot of kids in the orphanage. The receptionist then asks him if he can come with her to take a picture. He gets very nervous, and we see him anxiously follow her while stumbling. Kaemin says that seeing as he can't even control his speed, it seems like it's true he just awakened. Jae says not to be fooled. Kaemin wonders why he's so harsh on the kid, asking if he did something wrong. Jae says something like that, and he says no matter how many times he thinks about it, he wasn't awakened in the past. He wonders if it's truly a coincidence this time or perhaps Ark succeeded in artificial awakening. Maybe that's why they disbanded the River of Promise. But he shakes his head, saying there's no way. Even though a lot has changed because he saved the kids back at the school, it shouldn't be to this extent. He starts to talk to another receptionist about something else, which we don't get to hear. Then we jump to them in the car, where Jae has a slime in a petri dish. He tells Taewoo that it is a present and he should try gripping it. Taewoo squeezes it, and it breaks apart back into the dish, saying he can't believe he ruined the present. Jae reassures him it's okay and that they'll stick together again. It's slime for awakened people used as a training tool. He needs to have the strength of an awakened to scatter the orbs. When the mana is depleted inside of the orbs will stick together again. Taewoo seems excited, saying he finds it very interesting. They continue driving down the road. As they stop at a red light, Jae asks what Taewoo plans to do now. Taewoo asks what he means, and Jae says usually, when people around his age awaken, they wish to be hunters. Taewoo asks if that was the same for Jae. He says no, as he awakened at an earlier age and didn't even want to become a hunter. Kaemin asks how he became one then. Jae forgot that the plan was to encourage Taewoo to enroll at the school. He says that contrary to his expectations, it turned out to be fun once he tried it. He tells Taewoo if he wants to be a hunter, he'll help him. He asks if Taewoo remembers the model school he taught him about. Taewoo asks if he means the hunter training one. Jae says it's a little lacking to be called an actual school, but the principal will take care of that as soon as possible. Speaking of the principal, he's been appearing on the news channel a lot. Kaemin gives a thumbs up out of Taewoo's sight and says he will soon leave the hospital, so he shouldn't mind the rumors. Jae then says he's sure it would be better than joining some shady guild, and if Taewoo is interested, he can have his number. Taewoo thanks Jae, and then notices something outside as he sees people running, wondering what's going on. Then we see the mobs called salamanders running rampant in the streets. Flashback ends, Jae jumps off the back of the car around a lamp post. Once the vine is pulled taut, he starts to run forward, bouncing off salamander heads, getting closer to the giant one. He gets the vine around its mouth, but it has too much force and opens, moving it further down. It now gets lassoed around the lower end of its jaw, and Jae pulls the vine up as tight as he can, causing the giant salamander's head to raise, closing its mouth. Kaemin takes the chance to quickly drive under it, only for it to immediately slam back into the ground, destroying the road. Taewoo still cries, saying he'll live life as a good child, and Kaemin wonders if they made it only to get jump scared by Jae jumping on the hood of the car. Taewoo dies and they are sued with child negligence. Jae says the big one passed out and the small ones have been blocked off. She tells him he actually looked pretty cool out there. Jae asks how they get to the orphanage from there, and Taewoo says he just needs to turn right up here and then a left after. Jae says there wasn't even any emergency escape program for such a situation and that this isn't something an emergency text message can solve. They arrive at the orphanage, and Kaemin quickly blocks off the road with her vines. She asks if this is the right place. Taewoo says yes, and Kaemin asks Jae if he thinks the big one back there was a boss. He says he's not too sure, but it was a little too small to be the boss. He says it was good that none of them spit fire, because if they did. She cuts him off, saying he shouldn't say such things. Jae then gets a strange feeling and continues walking forward, wondering why he smells blood from inside the orphanage. Jae then calls out to Kaemin, saying that he would like her to stay here with Taewoo. She looks worried and says okay. He then heads inside the orphanage. There is nobody in sight. He follows the smell of blood, only to see someone wearing an apron, who is bled out all over the stairs. He says if a salamander attacked you, your flesh would melt away from the venom. There's no way a wound like this would come from a salamander. He wonders where the children are. As everybody that he sees dead so far aren't kids, all 10 people lying on the ground in front of him are adults or close enough. He says there are no traces of running away or resistance, as if they were killed by somebody close to them. He then heads inside the children's room and is immediately repulsed as all he finds are their corpses littered around on top of one another. He quickly heads back outside and says it's time to go. Taewoo asks about his siblings, and Jae says he'll tell him later. Taewoo presses, asking why he can't just say it now and what happened to his teacher and siblings, insisting they are surely okay. He starts to look very panicked, saying that they are his siblings and he needs to know the truth. Jae wonders if this is part of his acting, saying that since the orphanage is in this state, the connection between number 3 and the Ark will likely weaken. If they take him in under the pretext of protection and enroll him in the school during this time, it would be easier to monitor him and identify if Ark were to contact him. Jae thinks about what to say and recalls a flashback of Hong telling him when he was younger that he knows everything he experiences so far is stressful and probably traumatic, but he brings up how he said he hated the director. Little Jae says that he did. Hong warns him that he's doing the exact same thing that the director was doing, asking if he wants to be like him. Little Jae is surprised and screams no, saying he doesn't want to be like him. Hong says that he's much better than that human garbage and he needs to become a better person than someone like him and laugh in his face, and that he knows he can do it. Back to the present, Jae headbutts the window, saying that he's always lived up to those words until now and there's no way he plans to give up. It jumps back to the hospital, and somebody says that the laptop is now connected. Missin asks if they can wait outside while the adults talk. The kid looks happy and leaves. Missin says the incident occurred on a weekday afternoon, so fortunately most children were at school, and that the children who were safe are currently being protected elsewhere. As for Taewoo, there are records up until his first grade of elementary school, but after starting homeschool, there are only broad details and it's difficult to find out exactly what he did. Hong asks if the list of suspects has been narrowed down, and Missin says she's checked the surveillance cameras and dash cams, but they didn't get much, only the culprit who was hiding in a hoodie and covered their face with a hat. Hong asks if there's any clips of the face, and Missin says no, as this was only acquired by zooming in on a clip from far away. Kaemin asks if it's a male or female and how the perpetrator got away with it. Missin says it's better they see for themselves and plays the video. We see the person swipe their hand behind a car, and it immediately starts to compact in on itself from where it was impacted, slowly turning into a tiny ball, even distorting the camera. Then they enter the orphanage only to come out around 10 minutes later and look up at the camera with their pants soaked in blood, giving it a thumbs up and then breaking it. The only thing we see is that they had red hair. Kaemin wonders why they killed everybody in the orphanage, saying maybe it's a serial killer who took advantage of the dungeon break. Jae says with their skill, it would be possible to leave no evidence at all, and he believes it was left intentionally as a warning. Kaemin suggests that the perpetrator knew the orphanage was connected to the Ark, but Hong is making a very serious expression, saying he knows who that is. That's the person he was chasing in South America. Missin is surprised, and he says in the black market, when he was chasing them, he never saw them, and in the end, they got away. Jae asks how he's so sure, and Hong says he's heard a rumor about them. The rumor says they are a crazy bastard who turns anything they don't like into a small ball and makes it their trophy. But it's strange, the reason he chased after them in the first place was because he heard they were the Ark's boss. Kaemin is surprised that it's a child based on their stature, and Hong says it's only a rumor, so he doesn't know the details. Jae says that maybe it was an internal strife. If they think about the fact that there were no signs of resistance at the scene, that can be the only explanation. Missin continues, saying that there were no stolen goods or data, so it also fits what she thinks. Hong makes a Minecraft villager sound and says they should put out bait, and they have part of the Ark, and it could be simple. He could just tell Taewoo that somebody is targeting his orphanage and it seems that the director got involved in something bad, and now he is in danger. The other children are being safely protected, but since he's an awakened, it would be difficult to go with them. Given that situation, he should head to the model school. Even if he doesn't become a hunter, he still needs a way to protect himself. If they can spin that to him and he believes it, it will be beneficial for them. Missin smiles, saying she likes it, especially since they don't have to lie. She asks if she should investigate more about the person in the video. Hong says no, and if that person is going around killing anyone affiliated with Ark, it means other places are in danger, so first they must find Jae's sibling. Jae is confused, and Hong says he knows he's being careful, but if that person goes around killing anyone related to the lab, his sibling must be in danger. And that he should spill more information about his sibling, as the more they have, the easier it will be to find him. They should start with the basic things. They ask him what his sibling's name is. Our boy is cooked. Yet again, another flashback to 4 years ago, located in the lowest underground floor in a certain training center where the students were attacked at the start of the series, which is the River of Promise Research Center. We hear a woman asking number 3 if he slept well, telling him happy birthday, saying that they prepared a cake that he likes. He says, "Thank you, Mom," and she says that she told him not to address her by that word anymore, and he looks sad. She asks how long he plans on acting childish, telling him to think about what the others think about him, and he says that he's sorry, researcher, and they say that's better. Bro is low-key alone in the room. He's rubbing a wound on his arm, and the researcher says that he's endured well, and that there will be a visitor in the afternoon. Taewoo is surprised, and she says maybe a visitor isn't the right title, as it'll be the new director stopping by. The first director that Taewoo met at the research center had a bad reputation among the children of researchers, so he did not last long. The next director, though often absent due to being busy, cared for the children by establishing snack and nap times. When he wonders what type of person this one will be, one of the little girls walks up calling him Big Bro, and he asks her what she wants. We learn that she's number 8. She says that today is his birthday, and she heard about it from the researcher. He says that's right, and they'll have cake later. She has something in her hands, and says here's her birthday present to him, as it's cookies, and that she saved it from yesterday so she can give it to him. He looks around nervously and then whispers in her ear, thanking her, calling her by her name, Sohee. He breaks one of the cookies in half, saying that he should share it with her. She laughs, saying that she gifted it to him, yet he's giving half of it back. They then hear a ring, and he runs over, saying he thinks it's the researcher, and she needs to behave. As he heads over to the door, it opens by itself, and we hear a man saying he likes the atmosphere here, and the children seem bright. As there are multiple people, one of them says that he checked the ocean before coming. It wasn't good, and he had to dispose of everything, so he was worried. The researcher lady from earlier says that they can't compare them to the ocean, but Taewoo is just more curious at who the director is. Then he spots somebody in the back wearing a plague doctor mask, and he says that he's called the executioner, or the observer, and he killed the first director. Inside of his hands, we see it's none other than little Jay asking his mom where they are. She says they're at the research center, and asks if he heard dad explain it to him yesterday. He says yes, and the man asks if he's already forgotten, saying that he should stay here for a while. Little Jay sees some Legos, asking if he can play with them, and the woman says that he can play with them while mommy and daddy take a look around. They then spot number 3, asking him if he's the oldest and what his number is. He tells them which one it is, and the observer puts down little Jay. The director then asks Taewoo if he can watch her son for a little bit. Taewoo says yes, and the Birdman thing, guy, stands outside the window. Taewoo then walks over to little Jay, greeting him. He introduces himself, asking for his name. Little Jay laughs at him asking for his name, saying that you can't ask for that here, asking if he should tell his mother. Then he instantly says he was just kidding and looks inside Taewoo's hand, asking if it's a cookie, saying he wants it. He instantly yoinks it, saying that he won't tell his mother if he can have it. And he says forget the name, and then he starts to remember what his dad said his number was, and he says that he's probably number 12. Taewoo looks annoyed, saying after the new director came, contrary to his worries, their lives in the research center did not change. Number 12 didn't stay in the playroom, and he only came around at snack time, and he left at around dinner time, and the other children were very wary of him. But when he brought a bunch of toys and food from the outside, they all got really close to him. We see him walking up to Taewoo again, as he has a cookie in his hand, saying he looks great. Taewoo explains that all he had to do was give his snacks to number 12. He then slowly starts to open his eyes as the flashback ends. We see him sitting up in his bed. His arm shakes, and he grabs onto it, saying everything started changing when the third director died, and even more children entered. And when number 12's father, who became the fourth director, passed away suddenly, number 12, who had lost both of his parents, started living inside the room, and since then everything began to change. We see this slime on top of a newspaper, and Taewoo looks down at it. As he spots an article mentioning many casualties in an orphanage due to the dungeon break, he wonders what is going to happen to him now. He explains that when he met Sohee back at the orphanage, he was so excited he even dropped what he was holding. He thought that the heavens were helping him. He never thought he'd see her again after graduating from the lab. Even though she had grown bigger and he can no longer lift her easily, she was as cute as ever. But the heavens took away his younger sibling as if mocking the idea that they could ever continue to be together forever. He then gets a knock on his door and looks over as Jay is asking if he is awake. He says that he has something to discuss, asking if he can enter. Taewoo says yes. In his mind, he says that the director is happy that he got Jay's number, although the director is dead now too. Hong steps up first. He introduces himself. Taewoo recognizes him as a hunter. Jay says today he is here as the principal of the model school, not as a hunter. Hong says he thought he would tell him about the current situation. Firstly, the orphanage was attacked by an unknown stranger. There seem to be some people who want to eliminate the orphanage. Taewoo asks why they would want to do that, and Jay says they are still investigating the details. Since he was the oldest in the orphanage, they wanted to see if he could remember hearing anything strange from the teachers. He grips onto his blanket tightly, saying he is not sure. He then asks if that means they are saying that his siblings did not die because of the dungeon break. Hong says that's right, and if he could tell them anything he remembers, it would help find the culprit. Jay says now he has two options, either wait until the ARC contacts him again or speak up and join the school. He says that it seems like Taewoo doesn't have a place to stay, asking if he would like to attend their school. Taewoo is really taken aback, asking him what he means. It jumps 2 days later back to the classroom as Jay is looking over everybody's raid guides. He sees it's quite a few pages, asking who they picked as the captain. Yoon Young says that they didn't actually pick one, and since he told them to make a guide, they figured that they probably weren't a raid party but an advance party. Jay is surprised they avoided his trap, asking who they were going against when they wrote this guide. Yoon Young says they didn't have a specific target and they followed the International Hunter Association's standard for raid guides, trying to exclude elemental magic as much as possible, only sticking to the common kind. Because they were going into a tunnel, she did suggest light attribute magic though. Jae is actually surprised, saying it seems like Yoon Young might be the smartest here. But if someone from the management agency working under him handed this to him as a guide, he'd personally tell that person to quit as soon as possible. But he tells her good job nonetheless, as the fact that a group of 18-year-old kids wrote an 80-page long guide is something very commendable. Everybody's super excited that he actually praised them, and he asks what's wrong. Yoon Young asks if they really did a good job, and he says that he meant what he said, telling them they did great. The atmosphere is as cheery as ever. He can't help but see them as baby chicks and lets out a sigh while smiling, saying that'll be one good job sticker for all of them. We see everybody with their stickers. Yoon Wook even put his on his phone. He hands out the last one, saying they should get back to the topic. The guide does have some points that need to be fixed, and they'll leave the feedback for later. After all of them has heard that the principal has been discharged from the hospital, it may not be a time to commemorate the occasion, but they do have a transfer student. The room goes really quiet, and Yoon Young asks what he means, wondering what kind of student wants to transfer to this school. He wonders why that's what she's surprised about, saying that this is still a school and she shouldn't be so harsh. She says that she remembers hearing him complain about the school a while back too. He clears his throat, saying that Kaemin will bring the student here in the afternoon while Yoon Young and Sung Jian gossip, saying that he couldn't refute what she said. Jae says he's a year younger than all of them, but he's in the same grade as them, so do not tease him for being the youngest and take care of him. We see the wind blowing as Taewoo is sitting in Kaemin's car, looking outside, and she says that this is the school he'll be attending from now on. He's surprised they're already there, and his face instantly changes to that of an oh shit. He says he thought they said the school would be fully constructed next year, and she asks if they really said that. Jae's just glad that somebody else now understands his pain and that he understands exactly how it feels to be scammed by these people. Poor guy. Jae then introduces everybody to Taewoo and reminds them that he's younger than all of them and will be in this class starting today. He asks Taewoo if he wants to introduce himself. Taewoo gets a bit startled and then, in a very nervous tone, says his name to them all. It then jumps to some kind of smoothie store as Jae stands there rubbing his eyes, thinking that he's hallucinating, but Kaemin is happy. It turns out the man behind the counter is none other than Missun's assistant, and he recognizes him. The man is surprised, asking if they've met before. Jae asks what's with the name tag, and we learn that his name is Ji Yugun. He says that Soon Jin told him that he needed a name tag if he was going to be a barista. He asks Jae if he needs to see the menu. Jae asks for one iced Americano, saying all he's had from this workplace until now is instant coffee, and he should take this chance. Yugun then asks what kids even like to drink nowadays, saying they only drink hot smoothies. Kaemin tells him that it's actually gas. Jae decides to get one as well. We see him drinking it, and he explains that Hong is absent again since he said he was going on a dungeon raid. At this point, Missun, or the financial backer, should be the principal. He agrees with Kaemin, saying that the drink is gas, though. We see Taewoo looking up at the sky outside while people are talking, and he's practicing with the gift that Jae gave him. Jae hands him the strawberry smoothie and takes a seat beside him, asking him how school is. Taewoo says that even if he asks that, he's not really sure. Jae asks if his awakening is making him confused. He says that's part of it and looks a bit hesitant to talk about the next one but explains it anyway, saying that the director of his old orphanage had a son. They used to play together a lot, but honestly, he didn't like him that much because he was so annoying. He'd mess with other kids and take their snacks away. Jae wonders if he's perhaps talking about himself. Taewoo continues, saying that if he sees someone taking a nap, he'd make sure to wake them up and harass them as much as possible. He's definitely talking about little Jae. Taewoo says he's so annoying, but he can't hit a kid. Jae agrees. Taewoo then says that the director suddenly passed away, which solidifies that he is talking about Jae. Taewoo thinks about it, saying that he doesn't know since he seemed fine on the outside. But on the inside, he could tell that it bothered him that the director went missing, as his confident attitude instantly shifted to one of him being distracted and spacing out. And while watching that scene, he now realizes that nobody knows what life will bring you. Jae says he's just explaining that he learned a lot from his misfortune. To be fair, it wasn't even a misfortune. He does distinctly remember not liking the way he had to be pushed around, but he wasn't particularly sad because they didn't have much meaning to him as parents. And besides, his only real dad is Hong. Taewoo continues, saying that compared to that, He's lived a really peaceful life and never thought he'd awaken. Jae asks if he doesn't like the fact that he did. Taewoo says it would have been better if he had done it in the past. He explains it's because of his little sister that he planned to live with her once they got out of the orphanage. Had he awakened earlier, he would have become a hunter to make money. But now she's not here anymore, so he feels kind of lost and like there's no point to pursue the hunter career. Jae understands that all he has to do is ask if he wants to capture the person who killed his sister, but he doesn't want to manipulate his emotions and turn them into anger to control him because he's just a 17-year-old kid, and it would make him feel guilty. Jae thinks about it for a second and just tells him to do whatever he wants. Taewoo is surprised, but Jae explains that he was in the lab for so long, but he was truthfully born outside of it, and before he entered elementary school, he lived life like any other kid. Even Jae, who was born in the lab, dreamed of leaving the lab while listening to Taewoo's stories, so it's not hard to imagine what he yearns for as someone whose freedom was taken away. Jae tells him that the most important thing is his will. If he wants to become a hunter, he'll help him, but if he doesn't and wants to be alone, that's also fine. Taewoo doesn't actually look like he knows what he wants to do, and Jae continues, saying it's okay if he wants to make this his hobby, he can do whatever he wants. Then he asks where that annoying child he was talking about is. Taewoo says he doesn't know since he moved somewhere else, asking why he's curious. Jae says it's because he mentioned that he became an orphan overnight, so he was worried. Taewoo says that he hopes he's doing well. We then hear June screaming, wondering what's going on, asking how he got into school but she didn't, and Jae explains it's because she's still in middle school. She starts having a tantrum, saying that she awakened much faster than him and that she wants to be tested, but he's used to her tantrums because of how close they were in his timeline. If you've watched till the end, comment, vacuum, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.